Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto met Nell and built a legendary alliance with Yoruichi and Harribel? Episode 5. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, the war between worlds has finally begun, and Naruto must push beyond every limit if he hopes to protect both the Shinobi world and the spiritual realm. Now, let's start. Good grief, making an old man like me come all the way out of the living world. You two should be ashamed of yourselves. If they were, Hana and Uzumaki did little to show it, they only had eyes for one another. Youngsters, a lot of them. Truly, Yamamoto despaired of them both. Honestly, it was almost enough to make him question his life choices. He wasn't the sort to interfere in a lover's spat, but as head captain it was his duty to prevent unnecessary death. That said, he hadn't been entirely certain the young Hollow would kill her. One could never tell with their kind. Better safe than sorry, as the saying went. What do we have here? The head captain redoubled his grip on the blonde's wrist, preventing him from moving. I said that's enough, youngster. Credit where it was due, Uzumaki Naruto didn't panic when he got a hold of his arm. Most would have balked to find their limb trapped in his powerful grasp, but he simply stared down at him for a moment, tilted his head, and sighed. Did you really think I was gonna kill her, old man? Watch your tongue, brat. You may be powerful, but you are not omniscient. No one is. Fire flickered in the air, as the wind rose, heralding a clash. Retreat, unless you wish to face me in battle yourself. Is that a promise? Rather than try and pry his arm free in a panic, the masked Rancor simply slashed his entrapped hand off well below the wrist, both maiming himself and leaving him clutching a severed appendage. As he looked on in quiet consternation, the blonde grew a replacement in its wake, leaving him hale and healthy, as though he'd never been wounded in the first place. High-speed regeneration. Perhaps that was a less than subtle flex on his part. Perhaps it was a warning. Perhaps not. In any case, it didn't matter how quickly he recovered. All things became so much ash before his Ryujin Jaka. If it came to a fight, this would be no different. That said, there was something off about this Hollow. He wore confidence like a shroud, and arrogance like the colorful jacket draped high over his shoulders. There was a dangerous yet charitable air about him. He rather reminded him of Shunsui. Seemingly harmless on the surface, but the moment a fight kicked off, there was no length he wouldn't go to ensure victory. Even after tussling with Yakiru, he still had power aplenty, and strength to spare. But it mattered not. He was Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto, and in the last 1,000 years, he had never known defeat. That would not change, not in this century nor the next. Casting the blonde's severed hand down at his feet, the wizened Reaper fixed his opponent with a stoic stare. Remove that ridiculous mask and show your face at once. Uzumaki laughed at him, voice muffled through it. Yeah, it looks weird on me, doesn't it? I would have chosen a better shape if it were up to me, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. Sure, why not? Damn hard to breathe in this thing, anyway. With his free hand, he drew the hollow feed helmet up somewhat, revealing eyes of reddish gold set against black sclera, his pupils shaped like that of some strange cross. Yo! He granted him a saccharine grin, eyes gleaming. Are you the last boss? Yamamoto considered him for a long moment. Clearly this one didn't need the masked helm to access the full breadth of his power. It was merely an outward expression of his strength, a means by which he used to focus his might. Said strength had been somewhat lessened by all the blood loss he'd suffered through against poor Yakiru, but he was no less lethal for it. He was strong, easily among the stronger ones he'd fought. But the strongest? That remained to be seen. Moreover, the casual disparagement with which he referred to him bordered on outright insouciance. Still, to call him the last boss. It amused him. I am the head captain, yes. He rumbled gravely, what of it? Great. Uzumaki's grin grew as he banished his hollow helm in a swirl of red mist. Since you're the head honcho, mind tellin' your subordinate here not to throw her life away. Hana bristled in the background as he jerked a thumb her way, but didn't retort. Look, I wasn't going to kill her, but she actually wanted me to for a second, there. Don't you think that's kinda up? On that, at least, they agreed. Quite. Yamamoto fixed Yakiru with a stern look. Fourth squad captain. Nor did he miss her flinch just now. You are forbidden from throwing your life to satisfy your pride, am I clear? For a moment, it looked like she might protest, but in the end, she bowed her bloodied brow. Understood. Great. Uzumaki tucked his sword under an arm as he clapped his hands. Now that we've gotten those pesky pleasantries out of the way. The air thickened with raw reality and the promise of violence. Are you gonna fight me next, old man? Yamamoto tapped his cane down and retaliated with his own spiritual pressure, threatening to floor him where he stood. Careful, youngster. No brat has ever been successful at escaping me. Naruto merely cracked his neck from side to side and leered back at him, amping up his own Reitsu. Who said anything about running? Ho ho. You can still breathe despite this. Most impressive. You are a credit to your kind. As he looked on, the blonde shifted his stance ever so slightly, ready to react at the slightest provocation. Be it offense, or defense, he thought himself prepared. He would give the brat points for bravery, if nothing else. Despite his fearsome appearance, this baffling blonde radiated nothing but contentment in that moment. A soul who had lived a full life. Indeed, one could not help but wonder why he had a hollow hole in the first place. A shame, truly. In another life, he would have made a fine Shinigami. Perhaps he might once he was eventually slain and purified. Belatedly, he noticed the sword in his grasp. Was that an Asachi? He would have thought it his Zanpakuto, were it not for the staff at his back. His brow furrowed. Where did you acquire that sword, Arankar? From a friend. And that's not all. Naruto pointed at the night sky with a finger. Watch this. Byakurai. A bolt of white lightning fired forth into the gloom, obliterating the peak of a distant mountaintop. It vanished with a thunderclap. Ah, damn it. Uzumaki tutted, lowering his still smoldering digit. And here I was trying to blow the whole thing to kingdom come. Guess that's what I get for using a weak spell. He considered that a weak spell. Yamamoto took note of what he'd seen and came to a concerning conclusion. An Asachi was one thing he could have plucked that off a dead Shinigami's corpse, but to display such mastery over Kido. He wouldn't believe it if he hadn't seen it himself. Clearly, this was no ordinary hollow. Such spirit. Such strength. Such a smirk. Facing down someone like this made him feel young again. By that very logic, fighting him now would be unwise. They'd gained some distance from the town, but Hana would be caught in the backlash. Moreover, once the battle began, he might not be able to stop. No. Patience and temperance were the path forward this day, not violence. Karakura town was already badly damaged and would require repair. Kuritsuchi wouldn't like that, and the living world could not withstand the sheer heat of his Zanpakuto for long. With that in mind, he set his hands to his cane and stood his ground, refusing to budge, but unwilling to reignite hostilities. What do you want, Arankar? Uzumaki's spiritual pressure guttered out like a windswept candle. As he looked on, the hollow sighed and stowed his sword in its sheath. Would you believe me if I said I just wanted to go home? Yama grunted negatively. No, I would not. But I do. The Arankar whined, surprising him. I was literally 5 minutes from leaving before Princess over there. He jerked his chin Yakiru's way, up, and backstabbed me from one of those gateway thingies. Yours. She started it. Oh ho. Yamamoto looked to Hana, bemused, if only because it sounded like something she'd do. Did you, now? Yakiru looked away with a guilty expression and refused to answer. See. Uzumaki preened. Not my fault. Yes, it was. Yakiru sprang to her feet, having evidently healed herself when he wasn't looking, but only just. He noted a visceral new scar across her chest. You stole my dream. She laid a hand on that new scar, fingers biting down hard enough to draw blood. If you hadn't given me a new one to replace it, I would've. Naruto tilted his head. A new one. She clammed up, both hands over her mouth. Exclamation mark quote. He leaned in, utterly undaunted. What's your new dream, now? Yamamoto could hazard a guess. Yakiru had always been the emotional sort, ever since the early days of her alliance. When she wanted something, she wanted something. Changing her mind was next to impossible. It had taken him centuries to make her stop challenging him, and only then because he beat her down whenever she did. That she was staring at Uzumaki with such ardor now could only mean one thing. To his great amusement, the bloody captainess averted her gaze, rattled by Uzumaki's curiosity. It's none of your concern. Yakiru Unohana. Being bashful. Would wonders never cease? Well, color me concerned. Naruto scooted in closer still, drawing a sullen scowl from his rival. I don't wanna get backstabbed again. That shit hurts. Her eyes widened, alarmed by the very notion. You won't be. Then why not just tell me what your new dream is? Because I do not wish to at this time. For crying out loud. So stubborn. They butted heads and growled as they grappled with one another, his fingers closing around her hair while her own found purchase in his jacket. Honestly. They were fighting like a pair of love-struck teenagers now, or so he would have said if he didn't see the emotion burning in their eyes. That settled it. He was entirely too old for this. Best wrangle them before they jump one another. He had no desire to deal with more little ones running underfoot at the moment. Yamamoto coughed into a fist. I will apologize for my subordinate's behavior. However, you have wounded her greatly. That's not something I can excuse. Naruto released Unohana, allowing the battered captainess to slump down to the floor. That's a challenge. Eager, aren't you? Yamamoto tutted despite himself, brow creasing as raised his cane and pointed it toward him. Tell me, youngster, how do you think I've remained head captain of the 13 court guard squads for over 1,000 years? His spiritual pressure intensified tenfold as he brandished it, drawing a frown from the young man before him. Allow me to tell you. It's because no Shinigami born during that time has been stronger than I. Pausing, he let those words sink in. I've faced countless challengers in my heyday and crushed them all with my bare hands. He expected fear then, resignation, awe at the very least. Ironically, he got the latter, but not at all in the way he'd expected. Uzumaki's gaze lit up, looking like every holiday had come together all at once just for him. Hey! He chuckled suddenly, pinching his brow. I knew it. You're way stronger than Jiraiya and old man Sarutobi, ain't-cha? Yamamoto blinked slowly, somewhat at a loss. The flattery of an enemy was often something to be ignored. And this felt a great deal like flattery. I mean, I get it, old guys usually are tough as nails. The blonde rambled on, blind to his bafflement. I've met some pretty badass old dudes in my day, ya know. You stand head and shoulders above them, easily. And as far as fire users go. He hissed a laugh behind one hand. You probably could have snuffed out Sasuke out with one hand behind your back. How strange it was, to receive a compliment from one's enemy. I don't know who this Sasuke fellow is, but I shall accept the compliment in good taste. Gah! The blonde sighed, scratching furiously at the back of his head. I really wanna fight you now. Even if I'm nowhere near ready, but still. Grumbling to himself, he paced back and forth for a moment, muttering under his breath. Maybe if I. No, that wouldn't work. But what if I? No, that's not gonna fly either. Yamamoto looked at Unohana, somewhat bemused by the boy's behavior. This paramour of yours is certainly a lively one. Wherever did you find him? Hana flushed to the very roots of her hair. He isn't. He thumped her over the head with his cane, denying her defense. My dear, the two of you nearly leveled Karakura town while laughing your heads off and ravaging one another. If that isn't love, I don't know what is. I'm glad you encountered someone who can keep up with you. Even if he is an Arankar. Moreover, someone who wasn't him. He was much too old to be running around keeping tabs on her after all these years. She glared sullenly at him. How long were you watching? His right eye twinkled. Long enough. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Yakiru made angry Yakiru noises, tucked her legs beneath her, and refused to look at him. He still saw the heat sear up the back of her neck and into her pale visage as she hid her eyes beneath her black bangs. He'd probably pay for that later. Alas, it was simply too tempting to tease her, even if he was the only one who could get away with it. A grown woman she might be now, but there had been a time shortly before the founding of the Gote 13 when she'd been but a girl, wandering after him like a broken doll, dragging her blade behind her. Back then, he'd been the only one who could defeat her, much less keep her murderous tendencies in check. Now she was one of the few living survivors of that bloody era. It was only right to wish for her happiness, was it not? Even then it had taken her centuries to mellow out. Naruto came to a sudden stop and pivoted toward them, a lone finger raised. Just one swing. Yakiru peeked up at him through her bangs. Yamamoto blinked. One swing of your sword. Uzumaki's words were practically a plea as the young man clasped his hands together before him. I wanna see where I stand. I feel like if I cross swords with you, just once, I'll finally be able to understand something really important. Yamamoto blinked again. Blinked hard. Thrice. This one was a hollow, an enemy, no matter how pleasant he might be to interact with. By all rights, he should eradicate him. Central 46 wouldn't bat an eye. Indeed, they might even demand it were he to make this one's existence known in his report. If he included it in his report, of course. At present, he couldn't seem to find a good reason to. Old age was making him forgetful, it seemed. Such a shame. My word, but he certainly did have trouble saying no to the earnest ones these days, didn't he? Chojiro could stand to learn a thing or two from him. And in return, he asked, curious to see what this oddly happy hollow would grant him in return for such a gesture. I won't cause any more trouble today. Much to his surprise, the blonde actually bowed, low and deep at the waist. I'll leave without a fuss. It took Yamamoto a moment to realize he was laughing. How long had it been since he'd done that? Young Arankar. Hey, call me by my name. Uzumaki Naruto, then. He allowed. Are there more like you in Hawako Muendo? Who, me? Nah. He scratched the back of his head and beamed without missing a beat. I've got friends, sure, but they keep telling me I'm one of a kind. Good. That was reassuring to hear. One could be tolerated as an aberration, a rare exception to the rule, but if there was an army of super-powered beings like him swinging the swords of Soul Reapers and firing off Kido, he really would have to take action. That said, he really shouldn't entertain Uzumaki with anything like a prolonged clash, lest he learn more than he should. Just a brief burst, then, besides, he found himself curious as well. How did he measure up against this new era? Unsealing his Zanpakuto from within his cane, he wrapped his fingers round its hilt and swept his sword from its sheath slowly, keenly aware of Uzumaki's interest all the while. He could have donned that sinister mask of his or glowed golden again, but he didn't. He remained just as he was, watching him like a hawk. Well, Yamamoto rumbled at him, curious to see what he'd do. Aren't you going to unsheath your sword? Or shall I simply incinerate you where you stand? Let it be known that the Arankar never took his eyes from him as he unsheathed his sword, not once. He recognized the threat before him and faced it with his full attention. Moreover, he went a step further. For the first time since Hana had ambushed him, Uzumaki Naruto wielded his blade with both hands. Good. He was taking this seriously, as he should. Anything less would result in a fiery end. Now, then. Time to take the measure of the man before him. Flames flashed forth as he declared the first release of his blade. All things in the universe turned to ashes. Ryujin Jaka. An inferno burst from his Zanpakuto and sprang to life at his command, lighting up the night. The head captain watched it burn bright in the blonde's eyes, spreading like the smile currently splitting his face. There was no fear to be found there, not even an iota of hesitation. He stared down what may well be a horrific death and he grinned. Now that's definitely a proper shikai. He hummed, adopting a strange stance, one foot drawn back, the other sweeping forward as he brought his blade up in a style rather reminiscent of kendo. Just a little more, now. I can almost hear her. Hear who, now? No, wait. Uzumaki said to her just now. Her. And the way he was holding his sword. Ah. He understood now. He was on the verge of ascending to greater heights. For just as there could be no evolution with fear, so too could there be no progress without strength. What strength would spawn from that stolen sword of his remained to be seen. Indeed, he would likely be the first to witness it. Yamamoto rumbled a laugh as he realized he'd been had. Clever little brat. Have it you. In the background, Hana lifted her eyes at last. Yamamoto felt her sapphire gaze lance into his back. Uzumaki crossed the distance between them in an instant, leaping through the fire and the flames to get at him. He was full of openings, no doubt trusting in the strength of his regeneration and superior body to carry him through their clash. Full of holes. It was worth repeating. He could have killed him in that instant. Probably should have, at that. Whatever his duty to Yakiru, he was still the head captain after all. If he let this Arankar evolve any further, he might truly come to regret it. His sword arm moved, only to pause at the last instant. For a moment, the head captain beheld his death, not here, but on a rainy day in Seoul society, body cleaved in half as he died standing. In that instant, he saw the face of his killer, a man who he'd believed long since dead. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving him shaken. What was that? Time reasserted itself and Ryujin Jaka met Uzumaki's nameless blade head-on, just as promised. The ancient Zanpakuto stopped Naruto's nascent blade cold with the harsh ring of steel striking steel. Not a heartbeat later, his sword snapped in half. Ryujin Jaka kept going, slashing vertically across his chest. Blood boiled, then evaporated in the heat as he was consumed in the inferno. Uzumaki crashed down to his knees with a pained gasp, body smoking, stabbing his broken blade into the ground for balance. Yamamoto sheathed his sword and walked past him, pausing just shy of finishing him off. A single clash, just as you asked. Was it everything you desired? Naruto coughed smoke, swore softly and grinned up at him, realizing his error, or rather, his defeat. Well, damn. That's my loss. Really thought I had you there for a second. Yamamoto tutted in approval, pleased by his forthrightness. You came closer than most. I'll let you off with a light charring this time. Uzumaki chuckled hoarsely, beaming up at him like an innocent child. Kind of you. I'll show the same courtesy next time. Even now, on death's door, he had the strength to sass him. Ha! What a fine Shinigami he would have made. Perhaps even his successor. No, best not think of that. Ho! Yamamoto barked a laugh, pleased by his grit nonetheless. Bold of you to assume there will be a next time. There will be. Those burnt blue eyes regarded him intently, burning with a fire colder than the full moon above. I finally heard her voice. Next time you'll get to meet her and Kurama. His grin grew. Thanks for the lesson, Gramps. I'll be sure to remember it. How his blood boiled to hear such determination. Had he been handicapping himself this entire time? Interesting. Unlikely, but intriguing all the same. Then I shall look forward to it. Pausing, He opened a senkaimon back to the Soul Society, leaving the Arankar to his wounds. Craning his neck, he looked to his comrade. Say your goodbyes, Yakiru. Naruto turned a weary grin on her. Is this the part where you kill me? She tutted. Such a stubborn, foolish man. Yakiru took a hold of Uzumaki's face, dipped her head low and bid him goodbye, precisely in the manner Yamamoto had come to expect of her. It was a very long goodbye, mind you, lasting the better part of a minute. But when it was done, Naruto's laughter chased them through the senkaimon. See you soon. Underscore. Opening parenthesis comma closing parenthesis. Underscore. Ichigo finally found Naruto 5 hours later. To be fair, it took him a long while, if only because had to make sure everyone his friends and family were alright first. Inoue, Rukia, Chad, Ryu, to say nothing of his other acquaintances. Everyone was alright, thankfully. Some were rattled, but otherwise intact. Karakura town wasn't. The town wasn't leveled, but there was plenty of damage to its infrastructure, buildings, streets, and nearly every other building besides. That was to say nothing of the sinister scarlet stains left behind by Unohana's vile Bankai. And yet, despite the chaos, there was a single casualty. A few injuries perhaps and more than a few startled souls to be sure, but not a single death. Survivors spoke of someone or something spiriting them away from the worst of the explosions. Already he'd spied several shadowy figures moving amidst the rubble, assisting with the recovery efforts. More than a few of them had blonde hair and blue eyes besides. Some were actually reconstructing fallen buildings from nothing. How did you even do that? Could he learn that? Sounded like a pretty cool ability to have. But he digressed. Eventually, he encountered the arrogant Arankar on the outskirts of the town. Even then he smelled him before he saw him. The telltale scent of burnt meat and scorched fabric reached his nose long and nearly made him gag outright from the stench. Naruto had seen better days. He found him on his knees, body bruised and battered, wreathed in burns. No, more than that, he looked decidedly charred, like he'd rolled around in a fire pit or something and lost a fair bit of skin for it. He leaned heavily against a broken blade thrust into the ground, the sole sign of his support. Glassy blue eyes gazed into the ground without a hint of life. He must have been crouched down like this for hours, in terrible pain, because he had no reaction when he approached. Hey, you good? Ichigo tentatively nudged him with a foot. You better not be dead. Naruto didn't budge. Is he dead? Zangetsu grinned. Can I make sure? Just one little stab and. Ichigo smacked the blonde over the head with the blunt edge of his blade. Ow. Why me? Naruto inhaled raggedly and lurched upright like a zombie, grasping for him. Strawberry. Hey. Ichigo flailed at him, to no avail. Don't grab onto me like that. What the hell happened to you? Did somebody set you on fire or something? Long story. Food first, details later. Naruto slung an arm around his shoulder and allowed himself to be dragged upright. Come on, I still owe you that bowl of ramen. Better make that 3. On second thought, 5. He recoiled, but the blonde braggart wasn't having it and clung to him like a limpet. Food should be the least of your concerns, you crazy bastard. Don't look at me like that. How are you even standing? Naruto's burnt face twitched in a grin. Would you believe me if I said the power of youth? Not at all you, Belatedly, Ichigo paused and noticed something else just then. What's that? There, upon one of his few intact patches of skin, he saw it. Why do you have a hickey on your neck? Naruto made a strangled noise. Please don't tell Nell. How are you able to eat that much? Can you not? Hey. Naruto, for his part, utterly ignored Ichigo's remark and kept eating, digging into a second bowl of ramen with gusto. Yes, the capitalization was necessary. Ramen was the food of the gods. Anyone who said otherwise was getting a one-way ticket to a knuckle sandwich. After so long, he'd finally found his favorite food and he'd be damned if he let this opportunity slip through his fingers. Whoever said Arankar didn't need to eat? Lies. He certainly did. Viva la ramen. Ramen banzai. Blessed be the broth. Oi. Somewhere in the background he was distantly aware of Ichigo's sigh. Are you even listening to me? Without so much as a backward glance, he thumped the substitute Shinigami over the head. Shut up and eat, strawberry. Ichigo sulked and sighed the sigh of a surly teenager forced to enjoy life entirely against his will, but eventually did as he'd done. Which was kind of funny when you thought about it, because while he liked to think they were the same age, he was actually older than him by a few years. Not enough to be his dad or anything weird like that, but a big brother. Definitely. The thought drew a rueful chuckle from him as he tucked into another bowl. Tastes good, doesn't it? Shut up. Naruto grinned and kept eating. By some miracle, he'd followed his nose and found this neat little ramen stand tucked into an alcove just shy of the town's main plaza. Against all odds it had been left, relatively unscathed by his battle with Yakiru, and it was here that he'd brought Ichigo to share the spoils of battle. And by spoils, he naturally meant ramen. His treat, of course. He owed the surly Shinigami that much after all the havoc he'd caused him. With his colorful coat covering his hollow hole, he could almost pass for human, and while Ichigo received his fair share of odd looks for the giant honking sword on his back, he wasn't about to turn away business, let alone from a paying customer. Creation of all things, baby. Kinda surprising that the old man could see the two of them in spirit form in the first place, but hey, beggars couldn't be choosers. He made a mean broth. His noodles were to die for. Ayame and Tuki would have been proud. Almost made him lonesome for home. Why are you helping me? Ah, time for the serious shit now, was it? Pity. And here he'd been enjoying the break. Helping you. He slurped down a smile as he savored his noodles. I wasn't aware I was helping anyone. Ichigo planted his elbows on the counter and shot him a glare. Cut the crap. I want answers. This is the second time you've come barging into my life. What gives? Ooh, we're onto edgy words now, are we? Kurosaki thumped down a fist with a growl. Answer me. Naruto chortled, if only because he found this business rather fun. Was this why Kakashi enjoyed teasing the hell out of everyone? Shaking his head, he pivoted atop the barstool to face him, idly leaning a fist against his cheek. Maybe because I see a little of myself in you. You have a good heart. Ichigo scoffed. This from the guy with a hole in his chest. The low-hanging fruit was too ripe to ignore. How heartless of you. That wasn't what I meant, damn it. Alright, he held a hand up to temporize before the Kurosaki well and truly lost it. I'm helping you because I feel like it. And because Aizen had asked, but he needn't know that just yet. Learning the truth of his origins now might break him, and that would be a shame, so he settled for the truth as he saw it. No one offered me any help when I was young. Not for the longest time. And when someone finally did, it turned out to be a trap that nearly got me killed. Even now Mizuki's words rang in his mind, clear as day. You are the demon fox. Pounding his face in felt good. That had been his first real battle. Not his first kill. No, that came later. Still, if there was an underworld in this afterlife, Mizuki undoubtedly belonged there. He'd been a backstabbing bastard, and he'd enjoyed beating him down. Ah, right. Ichigo was still staring. Best address that. I'm sorry. Fine. Cracking his knuckles, he leaned back in his seat. I got my favorite technique out of it and wound up achieving my dream another way. I even got my headband and a bunch of friends later. I learned an important lesson from my real teacher that day, Uruka. The road was long and while I still don't remember how it ended, let alone how I died, I do remember this. Reaching out, he tapped a finger to Kurosaki's forehead. In the end, you can only get so far on your lonesome. Nothing will change if you try to walk alone. Doing everything alone, that doesn't work out. He blinked away a bad memory. The point I'm making here is this. His lips twitched at the bittersweet memory. Your situation's a little similar to mine. He glanced at Zangetsu, secure once more on the boy's back, already restored despite having been broken not 5 hours before. You've got a mouthy partner, just like me and mine. And just like me, he tends to take over when you get angry, or desperate, doesn't he? Sure, the two of you might duke it out every now and again, and he seems surly, but he's a good guy underneath it all. Kurama scoffed in his soul. Now there's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard one. Ichigo bristled. I still call bull. I won't lie, I have ulterior motives for helping you. And he did. As did Aizen. But they're not bad ones. You're already so much stronger now than you would have been without my help. And soon, really soon, you're gonna face a different kinda trial. What kinda trial? The kind that requires a full stomach. He whisked another bowl his way. Eat up. I can hear your stomach growling from here. We'll talk more once you've finished. I'm not that. His stomach growled anew. Eat. Naruto tapped the table with his chopsticks. It's my treat. Kurosaki complied, albeit reluctantly, shooting him another glare as he did, but not for long. Hunger had him soon enough. Naruto watched him eat with a sigh. He really shouldn't tell him about it. You couldn't learn without a little failure after all. He knew that all too well. Aizen had told him of his grand scheme for the Soul Society, and frankly, he'd been alarmed. So much so that he suggested demanded some revisions to the plan, and while there was no accounting for everyone and everything, he could safely say the current iteration of the plan promised to be a lot less bloody and a great deal more entertaining for all parties involved. Except for the Central 46, of course. Screw those guys. They were a whole bag of s. He'd happily help Aizen kill them. Slash 'em, stab 'em, slaughter 'em, and maybe the next batch would learn their lesson. Still didn't change what had to happen tonight. And it probably would be happening tonight, wouldn't it? Now was the perfect time. Karakura town was a mess, he'd clobbered a captain, and the old man himself had come out to play. Soul Society was bound to be on high alert. Which meant they would notice things. Things like a certain Soul Reaper who had yet to return to her post. Soon enough they would come, swords drawn. Speaking of swords, he patted his sheathed blade, idly rocking her by the hilt. How are we doing there? A sullen snarl filled his ears, soft and feminine. Her voice made it near impossible to tell who she might be. You broke me. Ouch. Still upset about that, He should have known. Naruto fought down a wince as he watched Ichigo dug into another bowl of ramen. Really, he had a good reason for wincing in the first place. The sheathed sword at his waist was practically radiating discontent. Really, if she was able to move, he was fairly certain she would have stabbed him in the thigh right about now, broken blade or no. You broke me. Were you even listening to a word I said? He fought down a laugh, so this was what it was like to have a Zanpakuto. How amusing. The voice in his mind was certainly persistent if nothing else. From the moment of her awakening, she had made her displeasure with him abundantly clear. She was a sassy little thing and she was not happy with him. Honestly, it was kind of like having an unwanted parasite at times, and a mouthy one at that. We're all Zanpakuto like this. Kurama was keeping mum on the matter, which wasn't helping. The occasional snort and snicker on his part only made matters worse. I suppose you could call her a parasite. His Zanpakuto cried out. Parasite. Wrong word. Apologize. Hey, just calm down. Apologize. Alright, alright. He patted the hilt of his sassy sword in what he hoped qualified as a soothing gesture. I really am sorry, ya know. A moment of sullen silence followed. Honestly. Yup. He smacked his lips. Why lie? She sniffled. It really hurt. His grimace became a genuine one. Ryujin Jaka wasn't undoubtedly ancient, but in many ways his Zanpakuto was a newborn. A child, really, freshly emerged from the sea of his soul. And he'd thrown her at a flaming monster, expecting her to win. To be entirely fair, he hadn't lied to Yamamoto. During their first and last clash, he had heard her voice, but not her name. Yeah, he could have blitzed old man Yama with clones and maybe Kurama, but that wouldn't have allowed him to accomplish his goals. Awakening as Zanpakuto was only the beginning. Now, for better or worse, he had to learn to get along with it. Ahem. Sorry, her. He didn't like the idea of forcefully subjugating a spirit. He hadn't enjoyed it when he did it to Kurama way back when, and he certainly didn't want to do it again. Better to just talk it out with her, once he got around to figuring out what her name was. Oh, now you care. You finally heard my voice, and my first moments of consciousness were pain. He ran his hand over the blade's golden handwrap, followed by guard, idly noting that it too had changed shape, no longer an oblong square but carved in the likeness of a brilliant light. It didn't give him any clues about her identity, but he would know if she was a fire type like Ryujin Jaka, right? Beyond that, he knew nothing. For lack of better options, and with Ichigo still slowly tucking into his meal, he took the initiative towards her once more. Look, I'm sorry I hurt you back there, but I really didn't think you'd break like that. He had the oddest impression of a young woman's silhouette perking up, a shadow in the fog of his mind becoming that much clearer. Did you think I was strong? Think. Nah, I know you're strong. He made no effort to hide his smile. You're my sword, after all. Even if my beginnings didn't originate with you. Now there was a chance to cry into Aizen's business, he couldn't help himself. Alright, you sassy sword, I'll bite. Where did you come from? She huffed, and didn't answer for a moment, though not from spite. He had the strangest feeling she didn't entirely know, and her response only further solidified that. If you're asking after my physical form, I don't know. I only became completely aware a few hours ago. Before that it was. I suppose you could say it was all akin to a dream. Like moonbeams piercing the fog, or the sun shining through mist. He prodded her gently, curious to know more. Do you know where you were before you came to me? Did you have an owner? I think so. I remember a dark place. A loud, noisy man. He said I was too small. He chipped me. All right, then, no love lost for her former wielder, then. I remember a man with glasses and a scary smile. Yep, that was his best buddy. He took me away from the noisy man. I remember being wrapped in a white cloth, darkness, and then. Naruto found himself leaning forward in his seat, unbidden. And then. You. He felt her unseen eyes weighing him for a moment. You awakened me. I stirred when you were fighting the bloody woman. Yakiru. He chided. Bloody woman. His Zanpakuto repeated the words with dogged emphasis, not unlike a churlish child. I started to wake up when you fought her. If you could call what happened between them a fight, because he certainly didn't. They genuinely tried to slaughter one another. Hadn't gotten that worked up in a while. She loves you. His face warmed up a little. I don't know what love is. Then you ought to learn. She chastised him. I'm not even a day old and I even know what that is. Fair point. He wasn't sure how ages worked when it came to Zanpakuto. As an Asachi, she'd probably existed longer than he had, but as a sword spirit, that is to say a Zanpakuto, she was technically a newborn. Nor was she finished ranting at him. And I never want to fight that old man again. When I clashed with that fiery Zanpakuto of his. Ryujin Jaka. He informed her not unkindly. Is that its name? He felt her quake in his grasp, right down to her sheath. He was so angry. He told me to go away. He said he had no time to teach a baby like me how to breathe. Her voice quavered. I couldn't face him. I flinched, and I broke. All right, time for a change of subject. A quick glance confirmed Ichigo was still busy ignoring him as he tucked into his meal, but the boy had begun amassing a steady stack of empty bowls on the counter. Rukia meanwhile still had yet to make an appearance. He had time. Leaning back in his chair, he stifled a sigh. Sounds like you've been through a lot. Let me make it up to you. He couldn't exactly see her, but he felt her perk up all the same. How so? Well, there must be something you want. Candy. He very nearly laughed aloud. Say again. Ahem. She coughed, embarrassed by her own outburst. I said, I would like sweets. How does that even work? You're a sword. Can you manifest and eat them or something? You let me worry about that. She practically ran him over in her excitement. I want takoyaki, mochi, dango, manju, and red bean paste. All right, all right. He laughed helplessly. I know what those things are. I'll look into it. It really was too easy to appease her. Almost like having a daughter. Wait, did he have a kid, now? He wasn't prepared for parenthood. No. Calm down. Sword spirits didn't work like that. They couldn't, right. Shaking his head, he laughed anxiously, shunting that thought aside. What's your name, anyway? I never did ask. It's about time. She made a happy noise, positively pleased by his inquisitiveness. I thought you'd never ask. My name is. A sudden snarl of static blurred Naruto's vision and made his head ring, leaving him clutching at the table, gasping for breath. It was as though someone had inexplicably shouted into his ears just now. Sorry, he grimaced, unsure of what just happened. I didn't quite catch that. Come again. She pouted. Hard of hearing, are you? That's fine. Listen well, for my name is. His ears rang anew, louder than before. He could feel a migraine forming. One more time. Exclamation mark. His vision went white for a moment. He'd almost passed out from the pain. The agony in his ears that followed nearly crippled him. Still, there was progress. Pretty sure he heard some syllables that time, even if he couldn't make heads nor tails of them. Are you mocking me? I'm not. He snapped back. I just can't hear your name. Neither can I. Kurama chimed in, quite concerned. It's like static in my mind. Oh. He felt her presence withdraw for a moment, sounded quite surprised. That's unusual. You can. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. He could hear her speak just fine, but whenever she tried to say her name, nothing. Almost like something, or someone, was actively blocking him, preventing him from hearing it. And not just him, but Kurama as well. Maybe he was reading too much into this, maybe he'd hear her name in time, or simply needed to better attune himself to her. All this time with Aizen might have made him paranoid. He really did need to be getting back to Hawako Muendo soon, ya know. Nell was probably well awake by now, and he was loath to leave her alone. He absent-mindedly rubbed the hickey on his neck, wishing it would just heal already. Really, this was taking longer than he would have liked. Where the hell was Rukia? She should have hunted Ichigo down by now. Someone's coming. A sudden noise drew his attention. Someone had just drawn back the ramen shop's curtain door and stepped inside. Naruto looked up, only to find nobody there. He glanced down. Bingo. Gods, but she was so small. You didn't really appreciate how short others were when you were tall, but this Shinigami was a midget. He hadn't a chance to appreciate that upon his first visit to Karakura town given all the chaos that followed, but looking at her now, she really was the runt of the litter. He pitied her. He'd been short once upon a time, too. Hopefully she'd grow out of it. Naturally took one look at him and blanched, reaching for a sword she no longer had, only to blanch upon remembering she'd lost most of her power. Uzumaki. What are you doing here? He raised a lazy hand in greeting. Nice to see you again, Rukia. Come to check on your strawberry, have we? Ichigo choked on his food, finally noticing her. My strawberry. Rukia, for her part, practically spat sparks. Fool. I have no interest whatsoever in him. I only came to check on his well-being. Kurosaki didn't take kindly to that. Yeah. Well, I'm just fine. Who'd be interested in a midget like you anyway? What was that? Naruto laughed good-naturedly as he watched them butt heads and squabble. Hey, he might not have known Jack when it came to love, but he could appreciate a cute couple when he saw one. A pity they wouldn't see each other for a while after this. All this fuss over one tiny little orb sealed in that Shinigami's soul. Honestly, he was tempted to just rip the Hogyoku out of Rukia and be done with it. But he couldn't. Doing so would kill her. And that wasn't Aizen talking, he knew this with complete certainty, from the bottom of his heart. And even if he could extract it safely, interfering now would deny Ichigo a much-needed chance for growth, which would leave him weaker for the trials ahead. No, the Hogyoku's extraction had to be done a certain way, at a certain time, a certain place, with a certain technique when her already uncertain powers were at their lowest. Which meant he had to play along for now, if only to make certain Rukia survived. One tiny little mistake and she would die, which would break Ichigo, but her death might also destroy the Hogyoku within her. He was strong, but even he couldn't resurrect the dead. Still, he could act as a guardrail of sorts, someone to keep things from flying out of control. Likewise, he could play the villain when it suited him. And when all was said and done, he'd apologize. He was doing this for their own good. You couldn't grow without a little struggle. Sometimes you needed a little push, and while he wasn't about to toss Ichigo and Rukia into a chasm like Jiraiya did to him, he wasn't above a little tough love. When all was said and done, they'd emerge from this ordeal all the stronger. His Zanpakuto sighed. You're a bit twisted, aren't you? Kurama offered the mental equivalent of a shrug. You learn to live with it. He did every day. That was what it meant to be a friend, and he considered Ichigo one. Oh my, but little Rukia had broken away from Ichigo and was currently glaring at him. Best do something about that. Why the long face? I'm not here to fight, little Shinigami. He leaned forward in his chair and tilted his head, expression bland as can be. If I were, you'd already be dead. Granted, he wasn't exactly in tip-top shape at the moment after fighting Nel, Yakiru, then getting immolated by Yamamoto, but even at half strength he was more than capable of kicking the crap out of her if it came to a fight. Not that he thought it would. This girl was more bark than bite, she had her own issues to deal with. But that was Ichigo's battle to fight, not his. He couldn't do everything for him, after all. Sure enough, Rukia didn't take his jab kindly. Why, you. Ichigo grabbed her wrist and reeled her back in before she could do anything foolish like cast a Kido spell. Rukia. He's not an enemy. Fine. She tore her arm from his and whirled away with a huff. I need some air. You know where to find me. Before her comrade could hope to say anything, she stalked out, leaving them behind. Naruto laid his chin atop a fist. Sue, gonna chase after her, loverboy. Ichigo thumped him over the head. Don't be ridiculous. He took the blow with good grace, grinning as the Soul Reaper winced. I'd go after her, if I were you. Do you really want to leave things like this? You never know what might happen. His brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean, you whiskered bastard? I mean you're running out of time. He fixed him with a gimlet glare, a smile fading as he sensed an unfamiliar spiritual pressure in the distance. One last piece of advice, don't let your guard down against the enemies you're about to face, not even for a second. Trust in your instincts and never, ever hesitate. A hand settled on his shoulder, clamping down with surprising force. That's quite enough for you, Urankar. Kazuki wants a word. Naruto exhaled in a long-suffering sigh and resisted the urge to slump where he sat. Does he, now? He'd known someone would interfere, he just hadn't expected it to be quite so soon. Clicking his tongue in mild admonishment, he sat up straighter in his seat, glancing up and over his shoulder to gaze into the eyes of his captor. Belatedly, he recognized her. The golden eyes, dusky skin, deep violet hair and confident smile were all too familiar. She wore orange and black today, too, paired with tan armguards over which she'd woven bits of blue cloth. Orange and black and blue. His favorite colors. He'd give her points on that front. Yoruichi Shihuan was a memorable woman. Most memorable indeed. Aizen had told him all about her. That said, I remember you. He scowled up at her, chakra boiling back to life deep inside him. You're the one who dropkicked Nell in the face the last time. I never did get the chance to thank you for that. Is that so? She leered right back at him, golden gaze gleaming. And here I thought I'd never be able to repay you for launching me across town. Lucky me. He thought about giving her what she wanted, then sighed. Don't suppose we can take a rain check on this, can we? I'm not in the mood. Too bad. Golden eyes flashed before him. If you resist, we're settling the score, you and I. Right here, right now. Lady, you have really bad timing. He held up a signed sleeve for her to inspect. I'm not exactly in perfect condition at the moment. Her grin grew. That's why I favor my chances. Ah, she thought she could drag him to that hat and clogs bastard because he was exhausted, was that it? His eyes began to glow. You underestimate my power. She frowned. Don't try it. Oh, I'm gonna. Hey. Ichigo balked in the background, belatedly reminding them both of his presence. What's going on here? Who the hell are you? Yoruichi waved a hand his way. Not your concern. Run along now. The adults are talking. Naruto sighed anew and made to stand. Why do I always attract crazy people? A tan fist whipped his way at lightspeed. He caught it in his palm. Careful, now. He realized his mistake a moment later as Yoruichi vaulted over him, dragging his limb with her. She landed behind him, grinning as she came down on his flank. The second she did, she pressed his entrapped arm into his spine, pinning it in place. Annoyed, he drove an elbow backward, only for her to get a hold of that limb as well and wrestle it back as well. Well, this was a problem. He might be faster, but in terms of skill, she certainly surpassed him. Weakened as he was, that might be a problem. What's this? She crooned darkly, lips brushing the outer lobe of his right ear. All bark and no bite. Are you worn out? I came all the way out here, just for you. The least you could do is make this worth my while. To her credit, she actually managed to hold him for a solid second. The blink of an eye. The beat of a heart. The twitch of a mouth. And then, Naruto broke free of her grasp, twisted around, and seized her by the throat. The instant he did, she sent a spinning kick screaming up at his chin, forcing him to catch her heel with his remaining hand. Yoruichi's laugh was his only warning. Gotcha. Rather than balk like any sane Shinigami, she grinned like a loon, dug her remaining foot into the floor, and latched onto his arm with both hands, fingers gripping tight. All 10 digits bit painfully into his sleeve. Too late, he realized her intent. Rather, why she'd provoked him into grabbing her in the first place. Both his hands were now occupied. Clever girl. Naruto swore and immediately made to stomp down on her remaining foot, trying to entrap her where she stood. Too little, too late, because quite suddenly, in a flicker of shunpo, Yoruichi Shihoin dragged him somewhere else. Things were not going to plan. Naruto realized it the moment Yoruichi got the upper hand on him, something she shouldn't have been able to do in the first place. Just a few hours ago, at full strength, he would have been able to run her down, run her ragged, and run her clear out of town in under a minute. Now, he was tired. There could be no denying that. He felt his heart hammer and his bones creak, his every movement slowed by pain. He'd already fought 3 captain-class opponents since then, regenerated countless times, burned through a sizable chunk of both his and Kurama's chakra, not to mention his own Reitsu, then been burnt to a crisp himself. And then he'd healed a certain strawberry's wounds after having unlocked a nascent Zanpakuto whose true name he still couldn't hear, because apparently there was something wrong with his brain and she couldn't tell him without giving him a pounding migraine. Sorry. It wasn't her fault. But, yeah. Kinda running on fumes here, and burn wounds were a bitch to heal from. Really, if it weren't for all those ramen bowls back there to replenish himself, he wouldn't even be able to fight back. In perfect condition, he would have been able to snap Yoruichi's neck like a twig the moment the sly speedster dragged him out of her flash step. Not that he wanted to kill her, mind you, but he certainly would have been able to stop her at the very least. Instead she was able to blast him in the face with a crimson Kido spell, didn't even speak the name, and that was enough to loosen his grasp on her. Then that was it, she squirmed free and any hope of a quick victory vanished with the wind. You're wide open, Urankar. A tan heel clipped the side of his head to send him skidding across the street like some rank amateur, much to his eternal chagrin. The pain stung less than the embarrassment. Jiraiya would have chewed him out for taking a hit like that. Get up. His Zanpakuto shrieked a warning with such fear that he couldn't help but comply. He tumbled aside, and well that he did too, because Yoruichi came hurtling out of the heavens to smash a fist into the space his skull had just occupied. The street split beneath her fist, kicking up a plume of dusty gravel in her wake. His keen eyes saw another kick coming through the smoke and blocked low, preventing her from striking his torso. Watch out for her punch. A tan fist smashed into his face, bloodying his nose to toss him away, sending his body tumbling across the street like a flung stone. His Zanpakuto whimpered pitifully. Sorry. I didn't warn you fast enough. Fast enough. Huh, could she see into the future or something? Naruto frowned into the asphalt, dragged himself up with a shake of the head, and took a moment to survey his surroundings. He'd skidded down the plaza toward what he assumed was Urahara's shop. It looked familiar enough and he could sense the man waiting within, having no doubt prepared a trap of sorts for him. A 2-on-1 battle was the last thing he wanted right now. In other words, nope. Crossing his hands, he planted a line of shadow clones 4 men wide and 3 deep between him and the man's less than humble abode. His reserves plummeted almost immediately, nearly dragging him down to a knee with a surprised gasp. Okay. Don't make any more of those. Really running on fumes here. Old man Yama must have messed him up more than he'd thought. Was he really that worn out? He should have more strength than this. What's wrong, Urankar boy? Yoruichi's lilting voice called out from somewhere above him, mocking. Don't tell me you've run out of gas already. If you won't come to me. He heard the telltale crackle of thunder overhead. Then I'll come to you. Jump. He did, just as a bolt of bright light lanced down from the heavens, the Kido spell immolating the space where he'd stood. That settled it then. He knew Yoruichi was lurking in the moonlight sky somewhere above him, hiding somewhere amongst the rapidly encroaching clouds. Great, a storm was coming. He could see the clouds. No running was gonna save him now. Rain was the absolute last thing he needed. His eyes flashed blood red as anger coursed through him. This cheeky minx. Kurama growled bloody murder in response, the sound echoing deeply in his stomach. Lemme at her. I'll teach that cat to fear a fox. Cat. It's in her scent, idiot. I know I'm a cat when I smell one. Switch with me and I'll gobble her up. He knew a bluff when he heard one. Hell no, you're even more tired than me. And our new friend won't be of much help either. He immediately received the mental equivalent of a girl's blurry silhouette bowing rapidly and repeatedly at the waist. Sorry. Hey. Kinda cute. Couldn't wait to hear her name. Shaking his head, Naruto bolted upright and leapt in the opposite direction of Kazuki's shop, forcing Yoruichi to pursue. What followed was an aggravating game of cat and mouse through Karakura town, one that only grew more intense as he led her towards the settlements. Soon enough, he could see the mountains he'd mangled earlier, and a nearby lake besides. Thankfully, Ol had N clogs remained inside his shop and didn't pursue. He must have seen the wall of shadow clones waiting for him outside and decided to kindly off. Praise the sage for small mercies, at least he didn't have to worry about getting jumped when his back was turned. Wait a minute. He whirled, realizing he'd lost track of Yoruichi. Where'd she go? On your left. A breeze caressed the back of his neck and instinct took over. He ducked low and spun around, sweeping her legs out before even realizing she was there. His timing was impeccable. No, beyond that, he was already in motion a solid second before she appeared, striking her ankle in midair, rendering her lunging kick a clumsy tumble, one that left her precariously off balance. He hadn't seen the future, far from it, he had simply heard and reacted to the warning given to him by his own broken blade. Was this what his Zanpato was capable of? A grin split his face. If so, his right fist lanced out like a powerful piston, catching Yoruichi hard in the stomach, blasting the breath from her lungs. She wasn't smiling anymore. On the contrary, she immediately retreated, vaulting backwards with a startled hiss, legs tucked into her chest to prevent him from grabbing her. Clever. But not enough. He wasn't letting her get away. Even as she retreated, he reappeared behind her and caught her shoulder with his right hand. Her head whipped back, but it was too late. His left hand burst forward, a crimson sero swirling in his palm. Her golden eyes widened in surprise, then she was gone, vanishing into the red light as he unleashed it upon her unprotected back. The scarlet streak plowed down into a mountain, obliterating it, alongside what was left of her, leaving a curling mist behind in its wake. Strange, he could have sworn he felt her shift in his grasp for a moment there before impact. No matter. Victory for him. Now to find Ichigo and catch her fist. He reacted accordingly, just as a pair of clenched knuckles plowed through the haze he'd left behind. That was close. As the smoke cleared, to his complete and utter disbelief, he found his nemesis alighted upon his outstretched arm in a feline crouch, still wearing a damnable Cheshire grin of hers and nothing else. Well. If it wasn't his old tricks would come back to bite him in the butt. How the hell had she dodged? No, never mind that. Clothes. Where the hell had her outfit gone? Not bad. Yoruichi tilted her head to the right, wholly uncaring for her, long violet bangs briefly buffering her bosom as she beamed down at him. You might have actually hit me with that at your peak. And here I actually had to make myself a smaller target for a second, there. A bead of sweat ran down his brow. Smaller target. Had she used some sort of trick to get away? A transformation perhaps. Ho! The Shinigami's grin grew impish when he didn't start sputtering. Look at you. You've barely made a peep. And you're staring me right in the eye. Her fist ground against his open palm as she leaned down on his arm to leer at him, unintentionally giving him quite the show in the process. I'll praise you a little for that. Seems you're not some blushing virgin after all. He very much was, but he'd become somewhat desensitized today by the sheer shenanigans he'd endured today. This wasn't the first time he'd accidentally seen someone in their birthday suit either. So, what now? Now. Her long lashes fluttered shut, then opened in a lazy blink. Now you surrender and come with me like a good boy. Unless you want to take more pounding. Double innuendo much. Nevertheless, he growled at her. Bite me. Her grin grew, pleased by his ferocity. Happily. She booted him in the face. He accepted the blow with a grunt, reared back, and punched through her. His fist phased through thin air. Damn it. Behind you. This time, the warning came a hair too early. He caught another bunch, but didn't see the kick in its shadow. He certainly felt it crack his skull all the same. She was getting faster. That, or he was slowing down. Neither outcome appealed to him. Naruto slammed into the asphalt face-first, righted himself, grunted and spat out a bloody tooth. He could already feel it growing back, but therein lies the problem, as it were. Alright, this might be a problem. I'm stronger, but in terms of hand-to-hand combat, she's definitely more skilled. Can't use my Zanpakuto since she's broken. His sword chirruped happily in her sheath. Thank you. And besides, he didn't wanna cause her any more pain until she recovered. Even if she could apparently peek into the future. I'm trying my best here. Exasperated, he tossed down a smoke bomb for cover, dragged himself upright and reached for his staff. Kurama cut into his thoughts before he could follow through. Don't. If you use your resurrection you'll wreak havoc. He was right. Karakura town couldn't handle that kind of pressure, even on the outskirts. Souls would shatter in his presence, to say nothing of normal folks. There was a reason he'd only unleashed it in Hawako Muendo, and even then he knew for a fact that it still felt worlds away. Yoruichi certainly wasn't going to give him time to release his staff and then let him neatly pack it back up again. Moreover, his wounds were still healing, leaving him a paltry portion of his true strength. There had to be some way to supplement it without hurting his Zanpakuto or bringing the world crashing down around his ears. Idly, he glanced to the lake and mountains he'd noted earlier, each of which were brimming with natural energy. Untapped power, not harnessed for dozens, maybe even hundreds of years. An idea dawned, and he found himself inclined to act upon it. What did he have to lose? He was, quite literally, at the end of his rope, getting his teeth kicked in. The deck was stacked against him. Really, retreat was his best option. He should run back to Hawako Muendo while he could. Nell was waiting for him. As was Roka, Stark, Hannibal, Ulquiorra, and everyone else he called a friend. No one would blame him for turning tail. Aizen certainly wouldn't. Not even Ichigo, who was mere moments away from the fight of his life. But he'd know. And the knowledge would shame him. Running away now, just because he was feeling a little under the weather, only a coward would flee. Well, he sat down with a sigh in the smoke, closing his eyes as crossed both legs beneath him. I'm at the end of my rope here. Might as well let go of it and see what happens. Kurama realized his intention a moment later. Don't you dare. You're no match for her in close combat. Naruto belted out a laugh. Too late, daring. His Zanpakuto made a confused noise. What do you mean by that? Unless you're going to understand now. Her words trailed into a delighted gasp, echoed by the sound of countless clapping hands. Go. Do it. I'm with you all the way. I'll do my best to help you predict her attacks. He was glad she agreed. Besides, all these awful odds. They just made him want to crush Yoruichi at her own game. Ichigo and Rukia would just have to survive a few minutes without him. His gaze gleamed gold as his eyelids drifted open, flecks of amber dusted the outer edges of his vision, lending him fresh strength in its wake. Alright, game on. Meanwhile. Rukia stared Renji down and prayed for a quick end. Not for herself, of course, she knew better. That was out of the question. Because you see, she knew what was coming. Likewise, she knew Soul Society would hunt her down. Central 46 was not known for their kindness. She'd always known this was the fate that awaited her. But to send Renji and brother Byakuya after her, wasn't that just cruel? To have her oldest, dearest friend point his blade at her and declare her a criminal merely for doing what? Even now he preached to her, full of himself. What the hell were you thinking? Passing on Soul Reaper powers to a human is a grave crime, you know. Consider it compassion from the higher-ups for letting us handle your execution instead of someone else. Now tell us where he is, Rukia. He brandished Zabumaru at her with a sneer, as though his power was something to be proud of. We're taking you in, then we'll go after the one who took your powers and kill him. Don't even try to protect him. So speaking, he adopted a familiar stance, one she recognized all too well. You realize it, don't you? You didn't dodge my earlier attacks. I've let you dodge them. The next one will be fatal. You'll die if you resist. A hand clamped down on his shoulder from behind, fingers biting into his robes. Care to repeat that, you Sanuba bitch? Renji pivoted, but his arrogance slowed him. He'd let his guard down, now he paid dearly for it. Who in the hell are? Crunch. The last thing he saw was Zangetsu slashing down into his shoulder. From there, Ichigo beat him senseless. So began their rivalry. Underscore. Opening parenthesis, comma, closing parenthesis. Underscore. Something had changed. Yoruichi realized it the moment the smoke cleared. She didn't regret not charging into the haze after Uzumaki. Not for a moment. Only a fool rushed blindly into danger when caution could win the day, but she couldn't deny the feeling that she should have. If only because she felt like she'd lost her momentum just now. Had she not? Because that blasted Uzumaki Naruto was getting back up again, and she had a bad feeling about this. He'd done something with his eyes. What was once a shining sapphire now gleamed a glowing gregarious gold, not unlike her own orbs, but the pupils were all wrong somehow. Horizontal alts, not unlike that of dare she say, a frog. No, a toad. Whatever the act, in its wake, the very nature of reality had changed. That which once was a raging chaotic force, now stood replaced by an eerie supernatural calm. What once was a flickering flame on the verge of guttering out, suddenly wasn't a flame at all, but a still pond, still and serene as glass. He'd ignored her before, but now, he didn't even seem to register it. As though her nudity had ceased to even be a factor in his mind. His eyes met hers, sharp and stern. Yoruichi Shihuan. He intoned her name flatly, drawing out each syllable with ponderous care. Former leader of the Omnitsukido and ex-Squad 2 captain of the Soul Society, otherwise known as the Goddess of Flash. The corner of his mouth twitched ever so slightly, almost as though another were speaking with him, no, through him. Congratulations. I acknowledge you as a threat. I hope you're happy. Oh. She scratched her cheek, mildly amused by his remarks. Am I that infamous, even among you hollows? No. She wasn't prepared for the sudden smile that flitted across his face. I just happen to know somehow who keeps a detailed catalog of his enemies. You're not the only one I've read up on. She glanced at the still sheathed sword at his waist, and the as of yet holstered staff on his back. He made no move to draw either. Not going to use your toys against me. Nah, here at last, a flicker of emotions shone through his dispassionate facade. She's broken at the moment. Don't wanna hurt her. Preposterous. Why lie like that? It served no purpose. That's absurd. You're a hollow, your Zanpakuto isn't alive. Oi. His face was suddenly an inch from hers, dominating her vision, forehead pressed to her own, eyes blazing into her soul. I'm getting really tired of being underestimated today. I've fought 3 people already. Unless you want me to show you 1,000 years of death, you'd better cut the crap. 1,000 years of death. That sounded like a killing move if she'd ever heard one. Still, her resolve didn't waver, even with him this close. No weapons, then. His brow furrowed. I could say the same of you. She shrugged. My sword's a sulky sort. Her abilities tend to put me down anyway. I prefer to fight with my fists. His brow furrowed. And you can hear your sword's name. Did she ever? She was constantly complaining whenever she came to visit. Yes, why? No reason. He shrugged, confusing her further. Fine, no weapons. Just our fists and Kido, if you like. That, she nearly questioned as well, only to pause at the last moment when she saw his expression. She'd seen him fire off a Byakurai and blow the crown off a mountain. He clearly wasn't a normal hollow by any means or measure. Still, to think that his Zanpakuto was alive, Rancor didn't work that way. Vizards like Hirako and the rest, yes, since they were original Shinigami to begin with, but not a Rancor. Kazuki had told her so countless times. So why? Naruto hung his head suddenly and held out both hands without warning, the left of which withheld 5 fingers splayed, while the right only had two, forming the curious shape of an L. He pointed the latter towards her, wagging it to and fro as though she were not but a churlish child to chastise. 7 minutes. A dark brow curled upward. Ho. 7 minutes, he repeated flatly. That's all I can spare to play with you, starting now. Well, he didn't lack for pride, she'd give him that. It made her want to tease him. Why so serious? And here I was hoping we could take our time together. No. His abrupt denial surprised her. I have somewhere to be. And you're definitely more skilled than I am. I'll admit that. In terms of sheer technique, you completely outclass me. I didn't wanna do this, you know. I really didn't. He shook his head, blonde bangs still shading his eyes from her view. You've left me no choice but to crush you. His head snapped up, golden gaze blazing impossibly bright. ... With overwhelming force, Naruto moved. No more words, no witty banter. In an instant, he was upon her, throwing his entire body into a whirling kick. Scarlet sparks crackled in his wake. Yoruichi hissed out a breath like the cat she was at heart. She hadn't seen him move, much less lunge at her. It shouldn't have been possible. No time to dodge. She grunted in surprise and caught his kick, only for the force behind it to unbalance her. Momentum slammed her down, accompanied by a crushing kick to her ribs and a bruising punch over her right eye besides. All this occurred in a matter of moments, barely any time to comprehend, much less react. He flipped over her, dragging her with him, and slammed her face first into the rocky dirt. His fist thundered down after her immediately thereafter, forcing her to flash away. Even then she didn't fully escape. Had she been wearing clothes, he would have torn a chunk out of her outfit. Instead he left a wicked bruise on her bare backside besides. Bastard. Was he mimicking her movements? No, this was different. Tumbling to her feet, she found him bounding from one foot to another, fists raised in a boxing stance. He grinned and jabbed at the air, pausing to beckon at her. Her fist phased through his torso. He'd outsped her, much to her chagrin. Has he gotten his strength back? No. Another kick came racing in hot on the heels of the first and launched her into a mountain. He was on her before she could recover from her rocky prison, slamming a fist in her torso. She caught his punch with both palms, gritting her teeth as she was forced further and further back into the bedrock, but even that still left him with a free hand, which he used to throw a straightforward punch. She almost laughed at the obviousness of it all. As expected. For all his strength and speed, he possessed little in the way of substance and style. She dodged it, use his own weight against him, and squirm free, just as she had before. His fist passed her face. She swayed aside and let it slammed into the stone wall. Just as planned. And then there was pain. Her cheek dented as something struck her, blasting her head to the side to send her skidding across the stones. What was that just now? Scowling, she righted herself and wiped a thin line of red from her lips where she'd inadvertently bit through them. I thought I dodged it. That was frog kumite. Naruto tore his fist from the bedrock and stalked toward her, cracking his knuckles. You can't dodge me anymore, Yoruichi. It's over. A muscle jumped in her jaw. Over, you say. And who are you to have the final say? Looking back, she couldn't say what made her react that way. Was it instinct? Pride perhaps? Fear? Didn't matter. In the end, the result was the same. She spat at him and cut loose with a cry. Shunko. White light burst from her back and shoulders, scouring her skin to momentarily lift her hair into the air. She caught a flicker of surprise crossing Uzumaki's visage and grinned in defiance of it, reveling in the brief burst of confusion on his part, even more so as she leveled a fist his way. This was a gamble, she knew, a technique she'd rather not use. You'd best be careful now, Orankar boy. She grinned at him, first drawn back to strike. I still can't fully control this. His foot caught her face and launched her into the lake. Boot. Naruto reappeared above her as she skidded across the water and thundered a fist into her face. The impact drove her beneath the water, but only for a moment. Her bare feet touched the lake bottom in an instant. She glared golden daggers at the moonlight surface above. Her brow furrowed. She liked water about as much as any cat, but this was a problem. Cheeky prick. Two can play this game. En garde. Scowling, she fired a high-power Tenrin and Reikoho up through the murky depths to distract him, then kicked herself up off the lakebed after her spells, launching herself at where she knew his blind spot would be. A hand closed around her face the instant she cleared the water, whipped her around, and tossed her into the sky. Well, damn. Once there, a hand seized her by the hair and whipped her back down into the lake, leaving her floundering in the shallows on all fours. Not for long. A sonic boom above was her only warning before he was upon her again. Those horrible blank golden eyes creased in amusement, and belatedly, she realized why. Too close. Way too close. How had gotten inside her guard that easily? You know, Uzumaki surprised her with a nod. My greatest skill isn't my strength, or speed, or even my intelligence. He scratched a whiskered cheek with a rueful smile. It's my ability to learn. I've studied techniques and learned them far faster than I should have. I never thought that was strange. Not even when I created my own. Recently someone who was teaching me, made me realize this. I adapt. I overcame it. I excel. You've been a brilliant teacher, Yoruichi Shihuan. He placed both hands together and bowed at the waist. You've shown me that I have much to learn. So I'll finish this quickly. Like she'd let him. Kicking upward at his chin with both heels, she planted her hands and rendered her lunge a spinning whirl, one he anticipated and backhanded with almost contemptuous ease. From there he ducked and slapped the back of her neck, a stinging blow that smarted her pride more than it stung her body and sent her splashing back into the shallows. Uzumaki waded in after her, uncaring as the water came up to his ankles, and boxed her nose. Left somewhat shamefaced by the slip, Yoruichi distracted him with a false feint for his face, onto a quick jab, crackling with white lightning. He countered with a cross to her left cheek, then while she reeled, clapped both hands over her ears, leaving them a ringing mess. Discombobulated, she staggered and employed an awkward elbow block against the wild haymaker that followed. Her entire limb creaked, arm fracturing under the strain. How was he this strong? Naruto's response was to drive a body shot into her ribs. She spat blood and tried to block a feral left, only for him to headbutt her in return, leaving her seeing stars. His elbow caught her right jaw, weakening it. Fractured with a punch, ducked under a swipe from her and broke her cracked ribs with a vicious 1-2-3 punch. She stumbled and received a heel kick to her diaphragm for her trouble, nearly sending her splashing back into the deep end of the lake once more. Rather than advance after her, Naruto merely beckoned. Yoruichi hissed like a scalded cat. Blast it all. She knew it was dishonorable, trying to finish him off when he was in a weakened state. But she wouldn't get a better chance than this. Still, to think the gap between them would be this big. Even if her pride snarled at her for it, she accepted his invitation and dove in at him in a burst of speed, driving her right hand forward in a lunging stab, two fingers thrust out to form a wedge and pierce his heart. Uzumaki caught them. Pinched them between three fingers now, pointer, middle, and thumb and forefinger, stopping her dead in her tracks. Her shunko sputtered and crackled ineffectually against him, unable to close the gap, only to wither and die in his grasp, its energy away by the blonde being before her. What in the world? Thanks for the meal, Naruto hummed, surprising her further. It's a neat trick, this shunko of yours. He commended her further with a smile, effortlessly holding her at bay despite the disparity between them. But I've seen something similar before and figured out how this works. Yours isn't so different, just keto-based. I'm sure anyone with a talent for kids could learn this, given time. You're bluffing. His eyes twinkled. Am I? With those very words, the back and sleeves of his jacket exploded in a shower of colorful fabric as a writhing red aura burst into existence, crackling with crimson lightning, lancing arcs of scarlet death lancing out from his limbs in every direction. It was rough, crude, far from perfect. In terms of control he had even less than her. But it was undoubtedly an imitation of her technique. Naruto maintained it for a moment, dropped it, then reactivated it again for good measure, making sure she knew what he could do. See, anyone can do it. Now, then. He yanked her inward, uncaring her, her bosom smashed against his chest, her nose nearly brushing his in her haste to stop. He didn't bat an eye. His little finger snapped up, still holding her hand fast, bending in her fingers with the thumb and index finger while holding said pinky aloft. Behold my ultimate technique. His voice thundered with untold power. The wuxi finger hold. The air trembled with the very premise of power, promising a painful, messy end for. Yoruichi squeezed her eyes shut in anticipation of the end. Nothing happened. No pain, no death, nothing. She dared to creak an eye open. Gotcha. Naruto's cheeky grin filled her vision. It doesn't do anything yet. Haven't figured out how to make it work, ya know. Her face flushed. This blonde braggart of a bastard. Aura. Laughing like a loon, he effortlessly kicked out her trembling legs at the knees, quite literally sweeping her off her feet and into the air. From there, he caught her before she could fall and held her up as one might some newlywed princess, his left hand coming around her back to latch onto her shoulder, even as the other demurely tucked itself under her knees, which promptly caused her to panic and throw her arms around his neck, leaving her hanging off him for dear life. He grinned down at her, utterly triumphant. Just like that, the predator became the prey, and the teaser was now the teased. She averted her eyes, face warm. That was unfair. Was it? He beamed. I call it victory. Unfair, unfair, unfair. How was she supposed to win after a showing like that? To make matters worse, he dropped her like a hot sack of potatoes, ruining the moment. Then he walked away. Like nothing happened. Hey! She shouted after him. Where are you going? 7 minutes, remember. A golden eye peeked over his shoulder, framed by a wry smile. Your time's up. I have bigger fish to fry. Can't afford to heal ya either, you'll just chase me. As she looked on, he used the raw reishi in the air to recreate another coat for himself and lazily donned it. Be a good girl and stay put, will ya? Damn it. This idiot was going to ruin everything. She had to stop him before. See you around, Yoruichi. Uzumaki. She tried to stand and give chase, only for both her ankles to buckle in on her, leaving her sprawled helplessly on her knees. She spat blood, her injuries catching up with her. And unlike a certain Shinigami, she didn't have a broken bankai to help her regenerate. Her ribs were broken, her ears ringing, her vision blurred, breath ragged. She couldn't move even if she wanted to. When next she looked back, Uzumaki Naruto was long gone, nowhere to be seen. But she could sense him still. And she knew where he was headed. Yoruichi buried her face in her hands to muffle her frustrated shout. This wasn't over. Opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis. You're so slow, Kurosaki. Even when you fall. Damn it, but he really was, wasn't he? He hadn't even seen it coming. Ichigo hit the ground without a sound, wasted and gasping for air, sporting 2 holes in his chest. Zangetsu was howling imprecations, demanding that he hold on, yet try as he might, he couldn't. Already he could feel himself fading. He'd only barely seen the attacks, but he hadn't been nearly quick enough to defend against them. He'd tried. Really, he had given it his all. Was this defeat? It felt like defeat. Stung like a bitch. He'd beaten that Renji guy handily, but this bastard, he was on a completely different level. Zangetsu had been broken before he even realized what happened, then it was all over. He was just so fast. His speed reminded him so much of Uzumaki's, but colder somehow, vaunted, superior, utterly out of his league. And this guy was Rukia's older brother. What kinda monsters did she have in her family? Damn it, Rukia. He couldn't let him take her. I had to do something. Reaching out with a trembling fist, he seized Byakuya's ankle. Even then, it was all he could do to grab his ankle and try to hold him back. Those slate-gray eyes regarded him as though he were no more than wanting to be trampled underfoot. Release me, boy. Ichigo snarled up at him, defiant to the last. Like hell I will. I see. His sword cleared its sheath with a sullen sigh. You have no need for that arm, then. Rukia cried out, reaching for him, even as Renji held her back. Brother, wait. Don't. Byakuya stabbed him without a word to finish him off. A foot intercepted his blade in a shower of sparks. Hey! Ichigo laughed helplessly. Because you see, he knew the owner of that foot. Looking up merely confirmed his suspicions. But something was off about him. He wasn't smiling. Not this time. Honestly, his savior sighed, I leave you alone for a few minutes and all hell breaks loose. This is the third time I've saved your bacon, ain't it? In all honesty, Naruto Uzumaki had seen better days. He looked like crap. Like a man who was on his last legs. Already, he'd fought so many battles today, wasted so much of his energy healing him, then fought again against that strange golden-eyed woman. Now he sported a shiny black eye alongside a bloody nose for his troubles as well. He was battered, bruised, and burnt. Had fought 4 fights in less than a day against powerful opponents, suffering more wounds than he could count. Even so, he stood tall. Credit where it was due, Byakuya reacted accordingly, withdrawing his blade, but never once taking a step back. Neither did Naruto make any effort to attack. Ichigo's hopes faltered. You're not gonna help. Naruto lowered his leg and stooped down to pat his head. Sorry, Strawberry. There are some battles ya gotta lose before you can win. That said, pivoting, he rose to his feet and pointed a fist at Byakuya. I've got a bone to pick with you. Byakuya Kuchiki said nothing. There was no need. Perhaps that was just as well, because Naruto immediately ripped into him like a dog with an old bone. You're being a jerk, but I'm sure you have your reasons, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm only gonna say this once. Blue eyes sparked red as he spoke, promising pain if he didn't comply. Apologize to your sister, pull that stick out, and live your life right. Do that, and I'll let you leave without a beating. The powerful Shinigami merely frowned. Who are you? You really have no idea who I am, do you? Tutting, Naruto shook his head. After all the trouble I've caused, I don't know whether to be flattered or embarrassed. Byakuya brandished his blade. Answer me. Maybe this'll jog your memory. Uzumaki swept his colorful coat out, revealing his hollow hole in all its glory. I'm sure Zaraki had plenty to say about me. Byakuya bristled. You. Me. Naruto jerked his thumb his way. So nice to meet you face to face, Captain Kuchiki. Said stoic Kuchiki regarded him coldly. It doesn't matter. You're too late. His steely gaze swept over Ichigo, drawing a snarl from him. With those 2 attacks just now I've shattered his soul chain, and his soul sleep, the vital spots of the soul. He should die in less than an hour, and even if he does survive, his powers will be lost. Who decided that? Ichigo gasped as a broken blade pierced his back. Ow. What the hell was that for? And now I've given him some of mine. Naruto sheathed his shattered sword with a flourish. Problem solved. Byakuya Kuchiki regarded him for a long, insufferable moment. Do you have anything else to say? Naruto thumbed his chin, considering. Yeah, I've got 3 words consecutive Naruto punches. What kinda half-assed naming shtick was that? Whatever it was, it did the trick. The captain rocketed into the air, struck a lamppost, and slid down it with a grunt. Ichigo managed a weak, mirthless laugh where he lay, battered and bleeding out though he was. Hey, you've done it now. Well, well, well. Naruto lowered his fist. Would you look at that? You're even slower than Yoruichi. I only managed to hit that slippery cat once in a head-on clash, but you. I got you 5 times. What was it you said to my buddy? Wait, I remember. Coughing into a fist, he deepened his voice and mocked the very captain that had broken Zangetsu and laid him low only moments before. You're so slow. Even as you fall. Byakuya rose slowly, eyes narrowed to slate-gray slits. Do you have a death wish, Hollow? The blonde beckoned. Do you, Shinigami? The air thickened with tension. Kaboot. Byakuya caught a kick to the chest and shot across the street once more. An arrow loosened from a bow, one that swiftly vanished into the treeline of the park. But only for a moment. Is that all, Kuchiki? Naruto barked after him. How far you've fallen. Hisana would be so disappointed in you. Family means more than honor. Or have you forgotten? Ichigo didn't know the name. Rukia, however, did. She gasped where she lay. How do you know my sister? Naruto merely winked. I know a guy. You dare speak ill of her. Oh. The air thickened, seething with spiritual pressure. Ichigo looked up just in time to see 2 trees topple, followed by a third. Byakuya Kuchiki reappeared, bleeding from his forehead. Gone was the stoic silence of a captain-class Shinigami, the cold indifference melted, the heartless facade he presented to the world at large shattered. In its place burned an apoplectic rage, the murderous fury of many who had been pushed too far, too hard, too fast. Brandishing his blade, he fixed Uzumaki with a look of pure wrath. You must truly wish to die, dog. Watch closely, Strawberry. Naruto planted himself between them both, one arm raised. This is gonna be a preview of what you'll be dealing with later. Ichigo gazed up at him, utterly at a loss as to what was going on. I thought you said you weren't going to help. Pulling the stick out this guy's and helping you are 2 entirely different things. Underscore. Opening parenthesis comma closing parenthesis. Underscore. Meddlesome Hollow. That loathsome, ill-kept creature. This pathetic piece of trash who dared to mock him. Byakuya seethed as he extricated himself from a tree, dimly aware of the blood sluicing down his brow. He didn't care. Pride warred with emotion in his heart, tearing each other to pieces to render an ugly stalemate in his soul. How he envied this Arankar. To live such a carefree life. Unbound by reason or rules. Free to do as he pleased. But now, to invoke Hisana's name, his wife's name, after her death. His beloved, to whom he'd sworn that precious promise. The idea that she might somehow hate what he'd become in her name. No. 1,000 times no. It was too much. Unacceptable. Inexcusable. Unforgivable. He couldn't stand it. Nay, he couldn't abide by it. Something in him, something that had been fraying for quite some time now, finally time snapped. Sick of it. He was sick of it. Completely utterly sick of this infernal facade and all that it had cost him. Byakuya pointed Senbon Sakura's blade at the floor. Begone from my sight. Renji realized what intended and cried out. Captain Kuchiki, no. Byakuya spat as he dropped his blade. Bankai. Bankai. Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi. With but 3 words from Kuchiki Byakuya, the night was swallowed up in a storm of swords. He stood silently by as the last of his Zanpakuto phased into the ground beneath him as though vanishing in a pool of water, generating a lone ripple in its wake. The surrounding landscape subsequently darkened around him, much like his mood, and within seconds, 2 rows of 1,000 giant blades rose up from the ground to the left and right of him. Pillars, to be precise. Row upon row of towering blades spanned behind him, far as the eye could see, with no end in sight. Even now, despite the apocalyptic, absolutely apoplectic rage coursing through his veins, he took some paternal pride in the properties of his blade. He had trained for years to achieve Bankai, longer still to master it, but he'd seldom been given a chance to use it. That changed tonight. At his unspoken command, those 1,000 blades violently scattered into innumerable smaller blades. Indeed, the blades of Senbon Sakura itself were too small and swift to be seen for what they truly are. But because they reflected light, they bore a striking resemblance to cherry blossom petals to the eye, flowing swiftly along the wind. It was a lovely sight consisting of 100 million blades, utterly lethal, and more aptly, final. Any foe who saw it was torn asunder like so much dust in the wind. And yet, despite that, the Arankar before him did not flee. On the contrary, he stood his ground and yawned. A muscle jumped in Byakuya's jaw. Brat. As he looked on, Uzumaki Naruto placed his left hand to his burnt forehead, closed his eyes, and shook his head to and fro, like some lofty instructor chastising him for a faulty Kido spell. Is that it? Already the beginnings of a frown traced his whiskered visage, positively wrought with disappointment. Bunch of blades that become cherry blossoms. I thought your bankai would be something flashier. What ya gonna do with all those? Drown me in petals. Laughing, he opened his eyes again and glanced over his shoulder, adopting a lecturing tone. Watch closely, Ichigo. And take notes. You'll be fighting this bastard later. The badly wounded Reaper balked where he lay, still sprawled on his stomach. Me. Byakuya echoed the statement silently but wholeheartedly in the dark depths of his churning heart. The idea of this fraud, this mere Ryoka, who couldn't even see through a simple shunpo, someday surpassing him, it was anathema. Someone so slow could never hope to beat him. Not in 1,000 years. That will never happen. It took everything he had not to snarl the last word, spitting it like a curse. Both of you will die tonight. Somewhere in the background, he dimly heard Rukia pleading with him for mercy, begging him to just take her and go. Strictly speaking, that would be the wise course of action. A fight here served no one. Byakuya tried to close his heart to his inner turmoil. He really did. Truly. But he couldn't. Uzumaki's remark about Hisana still lingered in his ears, a deadly dagger delving through the facade he'd worked so hard to erect these past few years. His outward mask had broken, leaving all his anger, all his ugliness, all his helplessness at the situation before him violently laid bare. His pride hadn't simply been stung, he'd stabbed him right in the heart. Just you wait. Naruto hooked a thumb outward and dragged across his throat like a blade, making his intentions abundantly clear. I'm gonna make this kid a monster, one who'll become even stronger than me. But for tonight, I'll be your opponent. Byakuya grit his teeth. The gall of it all. What are you waiting for, Shinigami? Uzumaki continued to goad him, blind to the beast he was about to unleash. I'm standing right before you. Come at me. Attack. He made a come-hither motion with that very same hand, fingers crooked into a claw. Or does the great Byakuya Kuchiki need reinforcements to finish off a lowly hollow like myself? Anger boiled up in him anew. He needed no aid. Nor would he accept it. For his insult against Hisana, for the damage he'd dealt his pride, he had to crush him, personally. Alone. Come on, the blonde beamed at his bankai and beckoned anew, fanning the flames of his anger as one might a wooden stove. Look at me. I'm half dead here. On my last legs, really. A stiff breeze could knock me over. I can barely handle a game of tag right now. Byakuya absolutely bristled. He was being goaded. He knew this. Uzumaki wanted him to attack for some reason or another. To do so now meant playing into his hand. Which was precisely why he shouldn't. This mustn't register on an emotional level. He was a captain. Head of the Kuchiki clan. He was above such things. And yet it did register. On all the levels. All the way down. All of them. In that moment, his mind imagined Yoruichi Shihuan herself were standing there, sneering at him. He could hear her voice, even now. You never could catch me when we played tag, Byakuya boy. With but a thought, Senbon Sakura surged forward to devour Uzumaki and Kurosaki alike. Naruto stomped his left foot down with gusto. At his command, a towering wall of earth tore free from the street and thrust itself between the wounded Reaper, sparing his life. Simultaneously, his right hand snapped out, seized the giant tile he'd created and whipped it at Byakuya like a discus. Senbon Sakura reacted instantly, countless blades slashing it to shreds before barging through the barrel over the blonde, consuming him in a torrent of colorful death. Uzumaki didn't even deign to dodge it. He simply held up a hand, planted his feet, and stood his ground. Then he was gone, torn to pieces. Kurosaki cried out in alarm at the sight, but only for a moment. Because, in that sliver of a second, that unholy instant, something repulsed Senbon Sakura. Byakuya didn't see what. He couldn't, not with the torrent of his Bankai completely obscuring the arrogant Urankar from view. Whatever it was, the force remained very much unseen. But as his Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi inevitably drew back, Uzumaki remained where he was, arm still outstretched, except now he was staring at his open palm in quiet confusion. Huh. The Urankar mumbled under his breath, words carrying to him on a stray breeze. So that's how it works. I'm startin' to figure it out. Still can't use it reliably though. His head rose, and Byakuya glimpsed something unnatural in his gaze just then. Uzumaki's eyes had changed color. Blue became violet. Just for a moment, barely a blink, there and gone in the next. He almost thought he'd imagined it. Yet he was unharmed. That shouldn't be possible. No one could have survived that. As he looked on aghast, Uzumaki closed his eyes again. When next they opened anew, they were neither blue, nor red, or even violet, but a serene shade of gold, leaving strange orange pigment to dust the outer edge of his eyelids. Now what? Why did his eyes keep changing color? What did this mean? For the first time since the battle began, a hint of uncertainty needled his soul. Not fear, never fear, he had forgotten how to feel fear centuries ago, long before he became a captain, but this was concerning all the same. What is he? He didn't know. As both a noble and a captain, that lack of knowledge concerned him more than he cared to admit. Uzumaki tilted his head suddenly, recapturing his attention once more. What's wrong, Kuchiki? You're spocking out on me. You want a freebie or something? A vein began to pound in the noble's temple and Senbon Sakura thrashed angrily around him in response to his rising anger. What are you implying? I mean, I don't mind. As he looked on, the arrogant Urankar tugged open his coat to bare his upper torso to him, exposing his chest, hollow hole and all. Go ahead. Give me a nice good cut to remember you by. But I'm warning you, if you waste it. Up came Byakuya's hand even as he spoke, redoubling the speed of his Bankai, sending it crashing down on Uzumaki's head like a tidal wave. Two more waves swarmed in from the side, swallowing him whole, cocooning him in a sphere of blades, from which there was no escape. With but a clench of his fist, the sphere contracted, shredding the one within. A low sigh echoed from the chrysalis of death. You're gonna regret it. A crimson sorrow burst through the verdant storm of blades and shot forth at speed, forcing him to flicker aside lest he be mowed down where he stood. Byakuya flickered aside, eyes widening ever so slightly as he beheld his most hated foe. With a sudden gust of wind, Uzumaki emerged, nearly a scratch upon him. Even his clothes were unharmed. Impossible. What, is that it? He flicked a few stray petals from his shoulder. Don't tell me that's all a noble can do. I was under the impression that you were actually strong. How are you unharmed? The whiskered warrior tilted his head. Am I moving too fast for you? Here, let me break it down. Senbon Sakura lunged in again. This time he saw Uzumaki intercepting the roaring pink mass of blades with both hands before summarily slapping them aside as one might falling leaves. A few stray petals fell from his fists to disperse harmlessly in the air, shriving away harmlessly at his feet. Here at last his golden gaze narrowed, And when it did, those eerie half-lidded glowing orbs regarded him intently. Better. But not enough. Not nearly enough. So speaking, he crossed both arms before his broad chest directly over his hollow hole, planted his feet, and stood his ground. Come on, then. A merry grin tugged at his whiskered cheeks, his voice bordering on saccharine sweetness in his sarcasm. Show me what a captain can do. I've fought 4 already today. I'm expectin' great things from number 5, Byakuya Kuchiki. The absolute disrespect. Behind him, Renji lurched to his feet, battered and bleeding, but not broken. Brandishing Zabumaru in hand, he nevertheless managed to stand and point his Zanpakuto toward their enemy's back. Just who the hell do you think we are? You damn hollow. Naruto's grin grew. You're still alive. Byakuya barked a warning. Stay back, fool. His warning came a touch too late, or perhaps it simply fell upon deaf ears. Regardless, the result was the same. The dull thud of Sonido heralded Aburai's fall. One moment he stood defiant and proud, glaring furiously at the Arankar. In the next, Zabumaru shattered into 1,000 startled shards, leaving him clutching naught but a ruined hilt. The lieutenant wobbled in place for a moment, eyes bulging in disbelief, then pitched forward, bleeding profusely from the chest. He did not rise again. Naruto clicked his tongue at the lieutenant's fallen form. Stay out of this, Guppy. I'm not in the mood. Byakuya blanched. What was that just now? His spiritual pressure completely disappeared for a moment. I didn't even see him move. If he hadn't been able to see it, then Renji probably didn't even know what hit him. Was he dead? Rukia cried out, this time for an entirely different reason. Renji. Relax, I didn't kill him. Naruto paid her no mind, still only having eyes for him. He's too important for Strawberry's growth. Kurosaki groaned into the ground. Growth. You betcha. Uzumaki planted both hands on his hips and rounded on the Ryoka, much to Byakuya's immense annoyance how easily he turned his back to him, beaming like a proud brother praising their younger sibling for riding a bike without training wheels. I said I was gonna make you a monster like me, and it shows. You kicked him by yourself earlier, didn't ya? I guess. Great. Now, then. Uzumaki pivoted back toward Byakuya, clapping his hands as though to rid them of unseen dust. Since we've gotten the small fry out the way, where were we? Oh right, he snapped his fingers. I remember. I was pulling that stick out. Kurosaki snorted in the background, to which Byakuya felt his scowl redouble. You are a crude creature, Arankar. And you're the poor bastard who puts honor over family. There it was again, the painful jab at his pride as the whiskered warrior smirked at him. How has that worked out for you? There it was again, the rage. He'd thought he had snapped before that he'd reached the limits of his anger. How very wrong he was. Byakuya closed his eyes. Inhaled, then exhaled now. Fought for some small modicum of calm. He did not succeed. Opening them anew, he gathered his bankai about himself, coiling Senbon Sakura tightly within itself until he was prepared to deal what he believed would be the final blow. I am going to kill you now. He bit the last words out on a hiss. Slow and painfully. Uzumaki flipped him off. I'd be disappointed if you didn't try. The arrogance of youth. Senbon Sakura descended from above and below, swarming Uzumaki like 1,000 stinging wasps. There was no escape. Neither above nor below. I have him. Despite that, he drew neither his staff nor his sword. Instead, he watched the whirlwind of blade petals with a weather eye, took his still raised right hand and pointed it towards the writhing mass of death. With fingers splayed, he began to speak wearing a shit-eating grin of feral proportions. Ye Lord. When he spoke, his voice rang with power and the harsh bark of Reitsu besides. Mask of blood and flesh, all creation, flutter of wings, ye who bears the name of man. Byakuya inhaled reflexively. Wait a moment. Was that no? It couldn't be. A hollow, even an aberration of an Arankar like this, could not possibly be used. Inferno and pandemonium, the sea barrier surges, march on to the south. A massive sphere of red light sparked to life before his hand, growing larger with each passing moment of the incantation until finally. Hado number 31, Shakaho. With a crash of crimson flames, the Hado spell plowed forward, much as his Sero had before, and detonated in his face, momentarily blinding him in a rush of fiery smoke and simultaneously forcing him to take a step back in surprise. He shouldn't have been able to accomplish the latter, not with such a rudimentary spell. But that was undoubtedly Kido. He hadn't used any such thing against Zaraki. This wasn't a pure hollow at all. This was something far worse. A hand clamped down on his shoulder from behind, mere moments before someone spun him right round. Stars consumed his vision. Clench your teeth. Byakuya neither saw nor heard the punch that followed, but he most certainly felt it. A powerful fist plowed into his jaw, sending his head snapping back in a shower of blood. His world dimmed for a moment as he nearly blacked out on the spot. Even as he fell, a fist seized his scarf to reel him back in like a hooked fish. Senbon Sakura instantly raced in to protect him in the wake of the attack, millions of blades raking across his arm and face. Uzumaki punched straight through his bankai, though it wasn't even there. He broke through. The second punch proved even more painful than the first, denting the side of Byakuya's head and eye in what would surely leave him with a black eye come the dawn. He caught the third by the wrist, for what little good it did him. Uzumaki instantly headbutted him, breaking him now. Blood gushed forth, soiling his robes further. Blazing golden eyes glared down at him. Well, well, well. Would you look at that? You bleed red like the rest of us. Who knew? Byakuya thrust his free hand at the Arankar's face. Byakurai. Naruto was already in motion. He violently juked his body to the right, narrowly evading a torrent of white lightning flashing forth over his shoulder. Although it didn't do any damage, the distraction served a purpose all the same. Senbon Sakura struck him in the chest while he was preoccupied with evasion, launching him away. The reprieve was woefully short-lived. Byakuya had time enough to stagger back, clutch at his bloody nose, and take a deep breath through his mouth. Then the Arankar was on him again. Dynamic entry. This time he led with a flying kick, smashing through Senbon Sakura as though it weren't even there. He managed to evade him by the merest of margins, only to realize his blunder a moment later. The second he struck the street, the blonde braggart bounced upright, flung himself into a handstand, and kicked out with both feet, striking him directly into the chest. With an aggravated grunt, Byakuya stumbled backward and lashed out with his bankai, only to find his arch-rival long gone. Where did he? He heard a noise over his shoulder and rounded on it with a lunge, tearing the Arankar apart. No, he'd struck an afterimage, which meant. ... This was going to hurt, wasn't it? Rasengan. Not a heartbeat later, a spiraling sphere of some sort smashed into his unprotected back from above and drilled him down into the ground, smashing him face-first to the asphalt. It hurt his pride more than his body. He lay there for a moment, stunned. Such humiliation he'd never known, even in his youthful days. He couldn't recall the last time someone had laid him out like this, not since grandfather. Worse, his foe made no attempt to finish him. Why? He'd already proven himself able to pass through Senbon Sakura in its limited state, so. A foot caught his ribs, breaking three as its owner kicked him into a tree. He crashed through it, struck a park bench, and skidded away into the dirt. He lost sight of Rukia and the rest in the tumble, because a hand quite suddenly closed around his face, dragging his regal visage through the muck before tossing him into the air. Senbon Sakura couldn't keep up. No sooner was he airborne than the dull thud of Sonido heralded Uzumaki's arrival behind him. Twin fists smashed down on his head, casting him back to the earth yet again. Once more he struck the ground, and once more, his body failed him. What was this? What in blazes was this? Even with his restriction applied, he shouldn't be struggling this much against an Urankar of this level. Was he a Vazo lord? No, even so. The gap between them shouldn't be this much. Get up. Uzumaki's voice growled at him from the darkness, manifesting as a pair of glowing golden eyes gleaming in the gloom. I know you're not dead. Byakuya grit his teeth but did as he was bid and gathered Senbon Sakura around himself once more. It was admittedly something of a struggle to right himself, but he'd suffered worse wounds than this. Pride aside, though the latter was in tatters, he knew he could still carry on the fight. And yet, when he watched Uzumaki step out from behind the shadow of a tree to confront him once more, something stilled in him. It wasn't fear. It was those eyes. Those infernal golden eyes. They reminded him so much of Yoruichi. Not for the first time, he beheld a silhouette of his old tormentor overlapping the blonde, sneering at him, one hand on her hip. Damn her. He blinked quickly and the illusion vanished, but the memory of it lingered on in his memories, haunting him even now. Uzumaki raised a finger his way. Had enough. Byakuya righted himself. Never. Have it your way. When he flickered out of existence, Byakuya matched him. Or so he initially thought. Instead, an open palm filled his vision as 5 fingers closed around his face, hurling him to the ground. Somehow, he'd managed to anticipate him. He read my movements. Like a book. Byakuya twisted aside the moment he heard the words, but it was too late. Uzumaki barged forward, checked him with his shoulder, then slapped him upside the head for good measure. Senbon Sakura swarmed forward anew. For all the good it did, his Benkai may as well have been leaves in the wind given how little it damaged him. At this rate, he might have to use Senkei, but the thought was a thorny one, and it galled him all the more. Even as he reeled, his mind whirled, fighting to find a path to victory. Was this some manner of magic? Telepathy perhaps. He was moving far too quickly. No, that wasn't quite right. It was as though he knew where he would be before Byakuya himself knew it. Almost as if. Crunch. A furled fist found his gut and left him doubled over, gasping for air. Thanks for this, Uzumaki grinned as he walked around him, lingering just out of Senbon Sakura's reach. I think I'm finally starting to get into the groove with her. How about you? Are we having fun? For all his pride, Byakuya wasn't inclined to believe for a moment that a filthy hollow could actually have a true blue Zanpakuto, but from what he'd seen thus far. No, it was impossible. Had to be. No. Naruto titled his head. You're so stubborn. Whatever would Hisana say? Byakuya slashed at him, forcing him to dodge. Do not speak her name. You have no right. Neither do you, Shinigami. Kill crush murder. Byakuya bit down on his reflexive outburst, struggling to comfort himself once more. You cannot win, Urankar. Your Zanpakuto, if such a thing truly even exists, is little more than a child compared to my Senbon Sakura. She cannot possibly. A spinning kick caught his chin and slammed him down into the mud. Startled, he struggled upright, only for a bolt of golden light to strike his chest and drive him down to his knees. When he recovered, he found Uzumaki pointing his still sheathed sword at him, face wrought with raw scorn. Listen to yourself. He bared his teeth at him, pearly whites flashing in the wake of a lightning strike. You can't see the forest for the trees. I can't even hear my Zanpakuto's name, and I know for a fact that she's still 1,000 times better than yours. Because unlike you, she knows the difference between right and wrong. A Zanpakuto isn't a tool. They're alive. Each one of them has a name. Thoughts. Feelings. They get mad when you ignore them, happy when you praise them, excited when you share common interests. Sweeping his enclosed sword behind him, he went on the attack. And then there's people like you. Whirling, he ducked Senbon Sakura and struck him upside the head with his sheathed weapon, concussing him. You, who believe your status means more. You, who think might make right. You, who won't learn your lesson even now. Another blow, beating him down into the rain. When did pride take precedence over your family? A fist found his face, bloodying it. Where did your heart go, Yakuya Kuchiki? Stomping down on his foot, he reeled back and struck him again. Where is your soul? A stinging backhand split his lip and nearly knocked a tooth loose, because it sure as hell ain't here. I'm gonna rip that prideful stick out and beat you to death with it. Anger stirred within him anew, denying reality. Uzumaki was provoking him, trying to draw a reaction out of him, he knew that. He was pressing all his buttons. He had never hated another as he did now. If only he weren't a noble. Yes, there were days when he longed for such freedom. Anyone so burdened would wish to be free of said burden, if only for a moment. It was only natural. No man or soul was meant to bear such a weight forever, and he had been carrying his for an eternity. But this Arankar, this hollow, this pest, continued to flaunt them, invoking his wife's name to spite him. How it burned him. How it galled. How enraged. Hisana. Oh, Hisana. Why did she have to die? From the moment he first met her in the chaotic 78th district of Rukongai, her kind, genuine nature broke through his carefully constructed facade. She was a light in the dark, someone who made him feel young again, as he hadn't since grandfather passed. Marrying a commoner broke the rules of the prestigious Kuchiki clan, and still he had done it out of love for her. Hisana had never loved him. Not as he did her. He knew this. She had admitted it to him upon her deathbed, citing it as her greatest sorrow and regret. But he'd loved her all the same, cherished her more than life itself. He had made a promise to her, a solemn vow to define and protect her younger sister, all the while keeping her in the dark. Now, he was breaking it. No, it was breaking him, or perhaps he'd been breaking for some time, he no longer knew. High above them, the slate-gray clouds finally gave up their bounty with a thunderous crash. With that, rain began to fall. Slowly at first, then with gusto, further obscuring his vision. It had been raining the day Hisana died. How he hated the rain. Bayakura's hands trembled at his sides, not from fear but fury. You know nothing. I do know some things. Uzumaki deftly sidestepped another burst of Sanbonzora. They batted its pink petals away as it came in for another attack. I know you're losing, for one. I know this isn't your best. And I know that this ain't what you want. Silence. Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi struck from all sides with renewed ferocity. Uzumaki walked through it. He just strode through Senbon Sakura as though his bankai weren't even there. Like it did not exist. Sparks flew through the air as millions of blades scrabbled at him and failed to pierce his hardened skin. In that instant, Uzumaki walked right up to him, through the blades, through the rain, reared back and crunch. Byakuya choked as 5 taut fingers pierced his chest from on high, drilling into his shoulder. Blood splashed forth, mingling in the rain. He staggered back clutching at his wound, expecting a follow-up, a counter-attack at the very least, but it never came. Rather it did, but not at all in the manner he expected. A lone bloody finger jabbed at him through the rain, but a single demand. Take it off already. How long are ya gonna make me wait? What did he mean by that? Byakuya blanched, confusion overriding anger for a moment. I beg your pardon. Your limiter. His next words almost had him sighing from relief. Take it off right now. He knew. But how? I know for a fact that you're holding back, even if it isn't by choice. Uzumaki ran a hand through the messy mane of his rain-slicked hair and glared at him. When a ranked lieutenant or above gets sent out here, your powers are severely limited so you don't adversely affect the human world, right? Which means your strength right now is 5 times less than what it should be. Scoffing, he shook his head. And you think you can beat me as you are now? Get over yourself. How do you know such a thing? Uzumaki merely grinned. Like I told your sister, I know a guy. An Arankar who knew Kido, possessed a Zanpakuto, and spoke of the limiter's high-ranking Shinigami war. That settled it, then. Someone must have taught him these things. Which meant, was there a traitor amongst the Soul Society? No, that didn't matter right now. The only thing that mattered was crushing the opponent before him. Investigation came later. Vengeance first. Only then would he be satisfied. Anger and pride reared their ugly heads in his heart alongside a pang of bitter envy, neither of which he could stomach. You are unworthy of facing my true might. Really? Uzumaki tilted his head an inch to the right, blinking raindrops out of his eyes. I'll give you 3 seconds to reconsider. Don't come crying to me when you're dead. He blitzed him. 1. Senbon Sakura lashed out, only to be summarily slapped aside like a rank amateur by Uzumaki's nameless Zanpakuto. Byakuya fired a hasty Bakudo spell in its wake, only for Uzumaki to break through that as well and seize him by the throat. Wrenching him up into the air, and ignoring the Bankai even now trying to tear him apart, he stowed his sword, then calmly reached up with his now free hand, affixing him firmly in place. 2. Then he began to squeeze. 3. Byakuya gasped in surprise, eyes rolling back in his head. He latched onto the younger man's wrists and tried to pry them away. To no avail, his grip was too steadfast, too powerful, too mighty. Something popped deep in his throat and with it, the world began to dim. He struggled, but without air, those struggles slackened, slowed, soon spent. Is this it, Byakuya? Uzumaki growled up at him, giving him a shake for good measure. Are you gonna perish for your pride? A small, morose part of his soul wondered if he should die. Maybe he ought to. If he perished here and now, everyone would be far too focused on the Arankar that killed a captain to worry about someone like Rukia. Her crimes would be, if not necessarily forgotten, soon pushed aside in favor of this greater threat. If there was a conspiracy, a traitor, in the Soul Society, then surely his death would throw a wrench in their plans. He could rest, having kept his promise. Go to where Hasana was. This was fine, wasn't it? He'd done enough, hadn't he? He was tired. Not solely of pretending, but of living a lie. So very tired. An image of Hasana's smiling visage flashed through his mind. He could almost see her. Reach her. And then he remembered. He wouldn't be able to see her, would he? He knew full well the fate that awaited him when he died. The same that awaited all captain-class Shinigami upon their demise. There would be no paradise for him upon his death. No. They were eternally parted, her back to the endless cycle of reincarnation, lost somewhere in the living world where he could never find her, and he, trapped pining after her ghost. Dying here wouldn't change anything for him, it would only lead to further damnation. Damn it. Damn needle. Damn. This. Arankar. He slapped a hand against his chest and forced his limiter open through sheer force. Release. All around him, unsealed spiritual pressure tore through the air as he regained his full might. Senbon Sakura Kujoshi surged back to life in response and attacked with fivefold strength. Naruto's arms erupted in a torrent of blood, as did most of his body, whether it was his old wounds opening from the battle, or perhaps Byakuya narrowing the gap between them, it mattered not. Despite the crimson trenches dotting his arms, he grinned, undaunted. Finally. Now we can ga. Byakuya tackled him before he could finish and went on the attack, uncaring of his Bankai. In hindsight, he wasn't sure why, only that he had to, that he must. They collided in a tangle of arms and legs, wailing upon one another like berserkers of old. He slammed an open palm into Uzumaki's jaw with everything he had, silencing him for the first time. The blonde immediately retaliated with a roundhouse of his own, snapping his head to the side in a shower of rain and blood. Undaunted, he rode the momentum and thrust a hand in his face, marshaled his Reitsu and spat a caustic command. Hado number 73, Soren Sokatsui. In hindsight, perhaps it was unwise to lose a fire spell like that while it was raining, but it was well worth it to hear the Arankar cry out in pain. The sound was sweet music to his ears. The scalding steam that followed the blue fire blast was slightly more inconvenient, yet he considered it a fair trade all things considered. Alas, his victory proved short-lived. A burnt and bloody palm pushed itself against his chest. Gran Rey Cerro. Much like the Keto spell, the torrent of blue death slammed into him, the difference being that it was immutably stronger. Momentum ripped him off the Arankar, who promptly tackled him to the ground in return, placing a booted foot over his throat to ensure he stayed there. High above them, Senbon Sakura stabbed down anew. Rather than retreat, Naruto glanced up, inhaled deeply through his nose, reared back and roared. Senbon Sakura Kujoshi visibly recoiled, repelled by the shockwave of his voice. In the reprieve granted him, Uzumaki struck mercilessly. Tearing his sword free from its sheath, he stabbed down into Byakuya's wounded shoulder, pinning him to the ground with only a few inches of steel. He glanced at the blade in disbelief. It was broken. No wonder he hadn't used it. Then why now of all times? He looked up just in time to see clenched knuckles fill his vision. Ah. That's why. I've blundered. Indeed, Byakuya Kuchikika most certainly had. Left, right, left again, then right some more for good measure. Uzumaki wailed on him with reckless abandon, fists slamming down on his visage again and again and again, till he could no longer see straight, until his vision became a crimson mess, until he blacked out and lost control of his Bankai. He wasn't sure how much time passed after that, only that some must have. When he came to, the rain had slowed to a crawl, leaving him bloodied, but alive. Belatedly, he dimly glimpsed his reflection in a nearby puddle. His face was a bloody mess, his right eye swollen shut, the captain's coat battered and tattered with blood. The Kenseiken, that is to say the ancient ceramic hair pieces which symbolize his noble status as head of the Kuchiki clan, were all shattered, leaving his hair hanging in disarray. He was defeated. Yet, apparently, his adversary stopped, leaving him hovering on the threshold of death. So where had he gone now? A shadow fell over him. He looked up. Oh, dear. In all fairness, Uzumaki Naruto didn't look much better. His coat was long gone, leaving his body a mass of crimson cuts and shallow bloody trenches, a telltale sign of the wounds Senbon Sakura had inflicted upon him. He also appeared to be missing an ear and eye besides, likely wounds he'd taken before his Bankai fizzled out. Yet despite that, he was still standing. Listen here, Kuchiki seizing his scarf, he gave him a stern shake. You may think you're entitled to your pride, just because you've suffered, but suffering isn't enough. He gave him a stern shake. You can't just be strong, you have to be smart. You can't just be deserving, you have to be worthy. But all you have ever been, is stubborn. Let go of your pride and think for once in your life. Do you have any idea how much you're hurting your family right now? Yes, he did. Which was why he must atone with his life. Hell would be preferable to seeing her tears. Byakuya gurgled wetly, refusing to give him the satisfaction of weeping. Kill me. Naruto blinked, incredulous. Kill you. Now. Here. Today. Yes. Silence reigned supreme. He almost hoped to think he understood. Surely he must. He had to. No. Naruto growled down at him, startling him terribly. You don't get to go yet. You're not going to die for a long while. You get to live. You're not mine to defeat, let alone kill. Byakuya coughed up blood, incredulous. You must. I ain't gonna. The arrogant Arankar snapped back. That victory belongs to Ichigo. But there is one thing you can do for me after all the trouble you've caused. Leaning low, he snarled at him, teeth bared. Crawl back to your soul society. Wallow in your shame. And tell your precious Central 46 that Naruto Uzumaki sent you there. So speaking, Uzumaki threw one final punch down. Byakuya blacked out. It was a mercy. Underscore. Opening parenthesis comma closing parenthesis. Underscore. Oh, my. You looked quite exhausted. Perhaps I might be of assistance. No. Naruto dragged a hand down his face and sighed heavily into it. You've gotta be kidding me. No, no. The rain held no answers for him. Just as well really. He wasn't speaking to it anyway, but rather the man standing at his flank, umbrella in hand. No, no, and no. Absolutely not. How many folks did he have to fight? He needed a break. In all honesty, wasn't surprised to find Urahara Kazuki lurking behind him the moment the fight finished. Really, if anything, he was amazed his fellow blonde hadn't tried to shank him while he was preoccupied with Byakuya. Sneak attacks seemed about his speed anyway, secretive soul that he was. At full strength, he would have shrugged his shoulders and rolled with it. Now. Damn it. He wasn't used to seeing this much of his own blood these days. His vision was getting all sorts of blurry, too. This might be bad. Of course, he couldn't let him know that. Alright, swaying on his feet, he turned his head, spat blood into a nearby puddle, and adopted what he hoped was a fearsome grin. You got the drop on me. We fightin' or what? I can go 6 for 6. He hadn't, and really couldn't, fight you. To his credit, the colorfully clad man merely smiled like the snake he wasn't. No, no, no. He waved a hand to and fro, dismissing the notion outright. Perish the thought. Just look at what you did to poor Byakuya. I wouldn't stand a chance against you. The rain continued to fall between them, lending his words further weight. That said, he prattled on, you did make quite a mess today. As you're well aware, many will be furious with you. Naruto felt his brow furrow in quiet consternation as he planted his feet to steady himself further. What'd want? Urahara's grin grew, losing some of its silly edge. A moment of your time, Uzumaki, nothing more. He scoffed aloud, still not trusting him. And I should believe you because I have your best interests at heart. In what world? Kazuki laughed merrily. Why, each and every one, of course. Naruto found himself bristling. Well, that didn't sound ominous at all. To be fair, the shopkeeper tittered, deliberately mistaking his silence for acceptance and not missing a beat like the slippery soul he'd always been. I wasn't aware revealing your location to Unohana would cause this much chaos in a single day. If I were, I really would have kept my mouth shut. Naruto twitched. Excuse me. He'd known the timing was suspect. You told Yakiru where I was. Ahahaha. Urahara quickly hid an anxious smile behind his fan and took 3 steps back. Now, Uzumaki. It was for your sake as much as mine, there's no need for any violence. Naruto promptly snatched the umbrella out of his hand and thumped him over the head with it, sundering his hat and leaving a steaming welt in its wake. I choose violence. The former captain took one look at his ruined headgear and sighed in forlorn despair. Why do you keep killing my hats? So friends, this was episode 5 of this epic crossover adventure. If you enjoyed it and want episode 6 soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. Who do you think will be the biggest obstacle in Naruto's path before the final battle? I'll see you in the next episode.